Hey, see, check this out. I knew there was something to do with Glasgow, and that because it was within 5 years of that of the police boxes being invented, and there's a police box in Almondbury. Look, it says here that this is one of the. There were quite a few designs for the tower submitted. This is one of them that didn't end up getting chosen. But look at this one. Look how that's brilliant. I love it. It's got like a proper thing up the side of it, like it's actually got, like at Grange Moor, they've got the top of the dome steeple thing, which is like an Irish bell tower style. This has got one all the way up one side. And in fact, they've ended up, that's like the one at Lindley now. They've got that tower in Lindley. So I think that tower in Lindley is probably got something to do with tribute to this. And it's got like an actual proper church sort of bit at the top with 4 spires. See, this looks really, really Arthurian, this. That's actually probably better than the one they've got at Glastonbury Tor. I'll put the picture of the Glastonbury Tor one on, right? But it says here, right, they got it down to 3 designs, right? And one of them, look, Mr. Walter R. Watson of Hillhead, Glasgow. I said Glasgow's where some firemen ended up designing the first police box. I think it was 5 years before that tower built. This is all what was happening at the same time. All this is going on at the same time. And then we've got that Mountbatten wedding as well going on around that time, not far off. It's all going off. They don't tell you this in this write-up. And it was a lot to do with this Tomlinson guy. He was pushing it, but then he ended up dying. Now, actually, the guy who owned the land, I didn't realise this, but he was a knight. He was actually knighted by Queen Victoria, so he's a knight of the realm. Sir John William Ramsden. So Ramsden didn't want some building on Castle Hill. He didn't actually, and he were arguing against it, right? So there's a lot of things going off. He didn't want it on, even though he is, at the time, a knight of the realm. So Ramsden's a knight of the realm, but he doesn't think there should be a tower built on the ancient hill fort, even though he was knighted by the Queen. Now, there's a lot of arguing going on. He's not, and then people keep pushing the ideas. Then Tomlinson dies mysterious. Well, 60-year-old. I mean, you'd have thought he'd have done better than 60. He dies. There's a lot of weird stuff going on, and then there's all these different designs, and then ended up getting it down to that design they've got now. Which out of them all, that one they've got now and they've built, to me, it seems very strange that isn't it weird that it's like like if you raise one of the squares up on the Battenberg cake, that it happens to be like that. See, this one, it's got sort of kind of like central. It doesn't show you any other designs. And according to this, it says that the Huddersfield Examiner were opposed to it. It says here, it's this Chronicle news, the Huddersfield Chronicle was supporting it. It says its rival Examiner suggested the tower would mar the landscape and serve a no useful purpose. Now, look at how many people turned out for the Jubilee. And it was also saying that look, somebody called Batty involved as well. Despite raising £560 and having a number of notable locals on the committee, including B.N.R. Batty. So someone to do with Batty's involved in it. Later on, in the 1970s, ended up doing a TV show. They decided to name one of the main characters Batty. Nora Batty. And a Battenberg cake is covered with marzipan, which is kind of a little bit like battering something. When you dip something in batter, you cover it in batter. So it's like when you batter a fish or batter a Mars bar, you're coating it, aren't you? Now, the Battenberg is coated with marzipan, which is almond flavour, and it's in Almondbury. You know? these are the things, you know, when your mind's bored, then you want to, like, you know, how do these ideas form at the time? You got to go back in time and then think what people thinking about in their head. And then they're saying that, they're claiming they don't know exactly how that Battenberg came out. There is some theories. Maybe it's got something to do with this. Maybe something's got to do with that. Right? God, come on, Marsden. Oh, that's a coincidence. We've got a place called Marsden. You know, what are the odds? What are the chances of that? One of the places around Huddersfield is called Marsden, and it's called marzipan, and it's almond flavour. And what a coincidence! Castle's at Swarmanbury, and then what even more of a coincidence. In the top of it, one corner's up like a little square, you know, like the shape of my bird kicks it up. I mean, you know, no one really knows. No one really knows what the origins of your show up. Come on, you know, it's quite funny. I've actually seen this photo before. I've never seen that photograph of the alternative tower version. Really interesting to see it. It does look, maybe they thought it was a little bit too. Kind of like too detailed or whatever, but I was just looking at that Glastonbury Tower one, and I was looking at it, and it's got like the doorway in the bottom, so even if it's locked up, you can still kind of shelter underneath it. The thing is, I've just remembered what I wanted to say now. They were saying that these were the arguments the proposed tower was to be 80 feet high on a base, measuring 12 square yards, and would have comprised a basement for shelter and the resort of the aged. So for old people to go into and shelter. Well, they can't shelter. You can't shelter in there because it's locked half the time. Except once in a blue moon, whenever you go to the opening times and you got to pay to go in, you got to pay for shelter. I mean, you got to go up the stairs and then you're not allowed in. I mean, what are you going to do, stand in the bottom reception bit? What about people getting past you when they go up the stairs? There's not enough room for shelter in there. With Glastonbury Tower, now Glastonbury Tower is a lot older, right? Glastonbury Tower, you can't shelter under Glastonbury Tower because there's no door on it. You can go in it and through the bottom of it and stand under it for shelter. Now, Glastonbury Tower obviously is very old, you know. It goes back to, just after, you know, 1100-1200 or around then, so or a bit earlier. So, you know, the idea for having a tower on a hill for shelter, it comes from Glastonbury Tower because you can have shelter under Glastonbury Tower. Now, what you can't do now when they ended up choosing this design is you can't have shelter under it and because it's always locked up. Now, the whole point of them building it, one of the ideas what they proposed for it was to have shelter. Porter's Lodge and the museum. Well, the museum was not up there. I think the museum, I don't know if it was Tolson or one of the other ones, I'm not sure. 3 public rooms for refreshments. Well, you can only go in there when it's open. And people walk straight up, go to the top, have a bit of time at the top, and then come back down again. No one hangs around inside it anyway. 3 public rooms on your way up when you go up there. They're always locked. A terrace at the top, measuring 10 yards square, a private room and terrace for subscribers. Well, who subscribes? I want to know who's subscribing to it now. No wonder they were trying to build somewhere else. They're not even making use of it. Oh, the arguments for building it are all these reasons, right? Name me one of these reasons that's still in use, except for, when it has got opening times. Fair enough. Okay, it's got opening times. But what happens when it's open is you go in, you go up to a little window, you pay some money, you walk up the stairs, you go up, have a look at the top, maybe have a chat for a bit, and then you walk back down. And I've never ever noticed any other rooms you can go and hang around in. I think I can remember, I think I've seen some sort of table, I seem to remember tables and chairs, but there's not, it's not heated or anything like that. And I don't really think that it's comfy to sit in there. It's hardly like, they've got, it's hardly like, they've got a modern cafe in there or anything halfway up that you can sit and hang around in, like, in Costa or something like that. I'm pretty sure that, you might have got me wrong on that. Maybe I haven't been up recently. Maybe they do, maybe that bottom floor, why don't they have a door? Why didn't they have a door on the inside so you can actually go in there for shelter? even at night. Although, you know, they might start saying, oh, well, people hang around there. But, you know, people wouldn't hang around there if they were, maybe, oh, we've got to have someone to watch it or whatever. You know, they could have put a camera in there or something. You see, this, I'll tell you what the problem is, right? They chose the wrong design. Because one of the main reasons, one of the arguments for building it is for shelter, right? And, you know, what tower in England can you go and have shelter under on a hill? Glastonbury Tower. Because it's built that way, where it's built so you can actually go underneath it for shelter. But they didn't end up building one where you can go up there for shelter all the time. It has to be open, so we're locked out most of the time. This design doesn't look like it's got much room for shelter either. Not all the time. But I like the idea of the design symbolically. It looks quite complicated. I can't believe I've never seen that picture before. So kind of weird. I'll show you that. Can I go to that Glastonbury Tower? I had it up not too long ago. There's one with some sun shining through it. See, you can go. See, there you go. You can go in for shelter whenever you want. That's the Glastonbury Tower one. You can just stand underneath it whatever time you want. The Glastonbury Tower one, you can go for shelter whenever. I mean, if one of the that's the first reason as well. The first arguable reason to build something is for shelter, right? Which would suggest, you know. What other tower can you go for shelter in England? And a well-known tower on a hill? Oh, Glastonbury Tower. You know, what are the arguments for building a tower on there? Oh, shelter, right? You know, well, we would have thought shelter 24/7. You know, whenever you want to go up there for a view, where you receive sunrise, sunset, watch the stars, whatever. You know, can you go there for shelter at Castle Hill? No, unless it's, you know, go opening times or whatever. So, you know, that writes off the first, you know, main reason, arguable reason for building it. You know, kind of funny. Oh no, there's something else it said in that story. It said they built one at Matlock or something. It said they built one at Matlock. There was something about building one at Matlock. There's a picture of the sun coming through it. Sun shining through. You see, look at that star there of light coming through. The kind of like the doorway that goes all the way through. You can stand on there for shelter. Main whole point. You know. So there you go. I'm going to search that Matlock Tower now. I'll go have a look for it, see what it is. I don't really know much about it. But so apparently they built one before in Matlock somewhere. Maybe they built, you know, if it seems to me that Sir Ramsden were really opposed to it, but you'd have thought that being a knight, being knighted by the Queen, you'd have thought that he would have been the one pushing it, but he wasn't. He was the one opposed to it. You know, and seems like this company that formed got a tower built in Matlock. Maybe they got that one built in Matlock, and then so they could try and kind of, maybe it was like a bit of leverage, you know, to maybe. I kind of think that with all this Battenberg thing going off, and you know, almond brie, almond flavour, Marsden, marzipan. Oh, it just happens to be like the tower when you raise one of the corners up. You know, it's just not. It's just like how it's not coincidental, is it? It's kind of like, you know, there's all these things going on at the time, and I just think that, you know, I think that you know, I think that there's more to it than just simply that. I think they wanted to get that tower on there. And they built that Matlock one first. I think there were a lot more planning behind it than just this. Oh, you know, this company. Oh, we'll get this company together and we'll build a tower. You know, there's more. There's more behind it than this. And the fact that I didn't realise Ramsden were one night because I ain't read it properly before. Now I've read it. Yeah, he were opposed to it, and his name's Ramsden. You know, and it's his. He's got a land. It's his land. you know, and wanted to bang a tower on there. But it was his land. Yeah, it's, you know, the Queen's country, but it's Ramsden's land. So it all seems a bit kind of. There's a lot of smoke. There's a lot of where there's smoke, there's fire. You know, in my opinion, you know. So a few more things to say as well, and actually, I recorded this before, and when I pressed stop, it hadn't recorded it. It kind of just vanished the video, so I've had to start again. So John William Ramsden, right? I haven't been able to find out what he was knighted for himself. For some reason, it's not showing up in the search. The reason Sir John William Ramsden, 5th Baronet. So his ancestors actually had all been quite heavily involved in things, and I think one of them, if I read it correct, it says that one of them was committed to the Tower of London for treason, to do with King Charles. So I don't know if that was to do with Civil War. I'm not sure, but I just saw it briefly that one of his, because he's traditionally, they've all got the same name, all his ancestors, right? So it appears that one of his ancestor might have been, put in brackets, committed to the Tower for treason. Now, it's got things to do with the High Sheriff of West Yorkshire. So I'm guessing that the knighthood's got something to do with either serving as a politician, a Liberal politician, or serving with some other title like High Sheriff. But his ancestors have been listed for that. I cannot find, whenever you type in for the knighthood, it always goes back to the 1600s. It's not showing up with the results for knighthood for himself, only ancestors. Now, what I said in the last video, what I'll know, let's not forget that, like, Sir Walter Raleigh also, served some time in the Tower of London. Quite a lot of knights did do in the past when they did have the Tower. Actually, for quite silly things like romances and stuff like that, I think there was something to do with the Queen and Sir Walter Raleigh. I'm not 100% sure, but, you know, it always seems to be, you know, when it comes to knights, it seems to be certain tiffs and things like that, you know, between and around making a point over authority, or, you know, somebody's going with someone else, you know, this and that. Now, let's get on to this, because this is quite significant if you're interested in anything and want to get a concept of, you know, things you need to know, relevant things to do with who someone is and what's going on at the time when you go back, and what connections they've got to other people and other things. Now, partner, Gwendolyn. Now, this is a name. Gwendolyn is like Guinevere, Gwendolyn, Guinevere. It's a name that it's a very Arthurian name, right? It has that air about it. So he marries Gwendolyn, right? Now, when I went on to the other page, right, which tells you about him, okay? This page that tells you about him, right? Now, I went through all this before, but it didn't record. Look, High Sheriff of Yorkshire. So I haven't been. It doesn't tell you straight away in this what he was knighted for himself, but it'll be something to do with that, likely, or serving as a. But I find it strange that someone who was a Liberal had connections with High Sheriff of Yorkshire position. It's if you're Liberal. You know, if you are a Liberal person and you're kind of easygoing and you don't like seeking vengeance or retribution, you know, you're quite sort of easygoing and you think things should be fair. It's quite an interesting connection with High Sheriff, to be honest, because punishment and justice are kind of like people who are Liberal people are kind of tendency to people that seek, you know, forgiving people and easygoing people. Now, what I've read before, I'll get on to the main point, because, like, what's it, 4 minutes, 47 seconds. So, Ramsden has been all over the place in England. He's well travelled, and he's got connections with engineering himself. So it wasn't just that he was approached by people engineering to build a tower. He had connections with companies. Now he serves in he serves, right, Taunton area. Now Taunton is the opposite side of the M5 motorway to Glastonbury, which is close by, Glastonbury Tower. So if you sit as an MP for Taunton and go to that area, spend some time there, you will have been to and know about Glastonbury Tower. And you'll likely have been at Glastonbury Tower. Just like when Tolkien came up to study at Headingley and Huddersfield, he definitely will have been at Castle Hill, because he liked Uffington White Horse in Hillfort, no doubt about it. Now, he served at West Riding of Yorkshire and Monmouth, and we know that Monmouth's quite significant with Geoffrey of Monmouth to do with all the Arthurian tales and that Geoffrey of Monmouth writings. If you're anyone who's well read and educated around those times will know about Geoffrey of Monmouth stuff. So he serves at Taunton, which is a Glastonbury area, and he marries somebody called Gwendolen. Right now, if you know anything about Hillfort, some of the Arthurian legends suggest that Guinevere in the Arthurian tales has connections with Old Oswestry Hillfort. And there's not a tower or anything on Old Oswestry Hillfort. Now, what I find the most interesting of all is that he's knighted, he's got all these titles and serves as politician, High Sheriff of Yorkshire, but he is himself opposed to a tower being built on Castle Hill, on our Hillfort. So whether or not he wasn't a fan of that tower being on Glastonbury Tower, but when we raise up the matter later on of one of the main points of when they're wanting to build a tower on Castle Hill, one of the main arguments is that for shelter, but obviously shelter all the time whenever you're up there, not only if it's open or closed, in Glastonbury Tower you can shelter under there all the time. Right? Now, if you write off the main point of shelter, having shelter available all the time, then it writes off one of the main points of building it. So that's significant, because the design of Glastonbury Tower, and he serves at Taunton, will know about this, is one of the main points for shelter, right? Now, what we don't have in that, the examining write-ups and all that, is the conversations of these people when they're, having meetings and knocking around, having a couple of pints in the pub. All we've got is a newspaper story. It doesn't say in the newspaper write-up, it says is, Tomlinson wanted to build this tower, and then there were so many designs put through, and, Ramsden knocks it back. He's not feeling it, and then Tomlinson mysteriously dies, and then there's all these designs, and then there's a guy in Glasgow building police boxes. The first police box ever is a square box. And then, there's a Battenberg cake going off. One of the designs for one of the towers is like a Battenberg shape with one corner sticking up and then upwards. And then there's Marsden. Oh, wow, Marsden's near Huddersfield, so is Almondbury, and, Battenberg's marzipan and it's almond flavour in the marzipan. All this is knocking around, all these ideas, rewind. What is going around the minds of these people in at the end of the Victorian era when they sat around in the pub? That doesn't tell you that when you read the newspaper article. It doesn't say, the examiner weren't too keen on it, because it might tar the landscape and this or that. It doesn't say, there's Battenberg cake going off, there's Marsden, and it's Marsden. Mars is the planet Mars, the god of war with colour red, and it's Almondbury, and then this Battenberg cake pops up. The Mountbattens, and Mountbatten is mounting a mountain with a batten, and Ramsden's not feeling it, even though he's been knighted and he's one of Queen's, companions or whatever, but he didn't really want his hill to be mounted, and his den to be rammed, and then Tomlinson mysteriously dies, and then, this is not what it tells me in the newspaper, don't tell you this, go fuck me, it's Gwendolen and Guinevere. And the guy saved down at Taunton in Glastonbury Tower. So he did go down to Taunton and hang around Glastonbury Tower. But he wasn't feeling it. So, write that in the examiner and see what happens. Not allowed. Not allowed. Banned. You say, it's Tony Earnshaw. The examiner won't feeling it. Tony Earnshaw, pick a pen up and his hand's shaking. Ooh, Tony Earnshaw, my hand's shaking right now. Ooh, like a fucking graph chart on Doctor Who with the angels coming out of the TV. It's the angels. They're watching the graph chart going, woo! And there's a police box now, it's Johnny Waker. Bloody hell. There's a Scottish guy. Oh, and the exhibition, the exhibition was in Scotland. One of the exhibitions was in Glasgow, demonstrating the tower, which is where the fireman guy came out with the police box idea when they made the telephone. Well, what coincidence! All these things are tied together, unbelievable, but we're not allowed to talk about it, apparently, free speech. And then we've got this, married to Gwendolyn Seymour, talk about Seymour, right? Ramsden thought he'd seen enough. He got Castle Hill. He thought he could see enough for Castle Hill. He's got Seymour. Sounds a bit competitive to that Seymour. Now, this is the thing, right? That, in the other video, I've put that about that Matlock and the Heights of Abraham, you see. The Heights of Abraham and that tower there, which is pretty abysmal and disappointing. If you see, that is like a baton shape, like in the Olympics, you pass the baton. It is, it's quite round, and it is actually quite baton shape. It's very, very baton shape, actually. And, mounting batons, passing batons, and, Heights of Abraham, it's just too... And then you've got Seymour. You can't see much of the Heights of Abraham. You can't really see much of the Heights of Abraham because it's all deep valleys, and you go in a cable car just to go over the deep valleys. It's not actually got any nice views. Right? So we've got daughters, Gwendolyn Seymour. So, her name is reminiscent to, Celtic tradition and Ilforts, and... he served on Taunton. So, and he's actually got some land. He's got lands up in Scotland as well. Also has Ramsden's got. He's got stuff up in Scotland as well. So he's well travelled. When you've only got horses and carts back then, he must have been doing a lot of travelling all the time. If he's knocking around Taunton and knocking around Scotland, he will go to these places. And he's been knighted. Now, we know that the Queen herself doesn't ask, she didn't say, she didn't say, I want you to have this tower on, but it seems very, very, who put these ideas just pop up from nowhere, or is someone is a friend of a friend of a friend trying to, through the networks of friends, trying to talk Tomlinson into doing it, and the engineering company, whether they're just doing it for money or profit, I don't know. But they've done that tower at, they've done the tower at Matlock. Now, we know with Beaumont, with Richard Beaumont, we know there were a lot going on to do with, serving as MPs, and there was dodgy things going on with the voting, and they wanted him to go to Clitheroe to be an MP. And then that dumb steeple got built. And then I've said before in the other video that, that tower at Matlock is kind of like an Irish-round tower, but without the top bit on it. But here we've got the top of the tower. Now, if you look back to the ancestors in the earlier 1600s, before the Bill of Rights, it's saying something about one of the previous John William Ramsdens or someone... serving some time in the Tower of London for high treason. I don't know, under Charles, right? So that, the symbol of that tower up at Grange Moor, is, it's just... there's a lot of things going on with these people, that aren't in the newspaper. You got to It's to do with names of people. It's always to do with names. Why do they have Neil Armstrong? It's got to be Neil Armstrong, going up onto the moon. It's got. These people are handpicked. Sometimes they're handpicked only because of the name and nothing else, which is quite tragic. If you pick someone just because of a name. But anyway, doesn't matter. He's with Gwendolyn, and he's got connections with Taunton, which is near Glastonbury, and they wanted to build that tower, and one of the main things is for shelter, which you can't shelter in it now. You can't just go up there on any given time and shelter on it because it's locked. So there's all this, and there were quite a lot of designs. Whether it was him himself who chose that design, but it got down to three. I know it got down to 3 designs, and I hadn't seen all of them. I've only seen that other one. I won't mind seeing the other designs, but they were on display up at Glasgow, which is where that police box was within 5 years of it being built. So it's all relevant. These are things that this is how archaeologists dig in the ground, in the soil, to find bits of things, try and work out what happened in the past. There's an arrowhead, or there's there's a piece of pottery, right? This is looking through history and finding out not what is going on in the earth, in the soil, when you're looking, excavating Castle Hill to find out what the previous use of the hill fort was. This is looking in the past, to find who's who and who's doing what and what the names are and whereabouts they went and what they're interested in, to find out what happened in ideas, in the air, in people's heads, in minds, symbolically and symbology, And it seems like there was some force or movement around and about, Battenberg's Queen. This organisation gets formed, then, a Batten Tower gets made at Abraham Heights, and then they're pushing this tower on Huddersfield, on, Ramsden and Gwendolyn, and, he served down in Taunton, and he wasn't filling it for Castle Hill. And then Tomlinson mysteriously dies, and then it ends up getting put through, and there are a couple of different designs. One of them happens to be kind of like an Arthurian design, but it ends up not being that design. It ends up being the Battenberg design, and that's it, done, right? So there's a lot going on. Oh, and it ends up being the model that happens to be like the design of the Battenberg, that is almond brie, and it happens to have almonds in it, and it happens to be marzipan, and we've got Mars Den. Yeah, it was Ramsden's Den, and it got rammed by Battenberg. So, tickle me. If you're not interested in this, there's something wrong with you. If you don't find that interesting, no matter which side you're on, not even getting to taking sides. He's just like looking at it and, oh yeah, that's interesting. This is it, If you don't think that's interesting, then, I think there's something wrong with you. That cauldron was found in 1891, right? So, 1891, and it seriously is. It's one of the major, well, it's meant to be legitimate because they've done testing on it. I was going to say whether it's legitimate or not, but, I guess there's always a possibility that people can fake stuff. But going on the premise that all the testing's true and real, it is the most thorough and deep record we've got of the actual culture of the Celtic people of of all of Europe, northwestern Europe, really, because all the French and Irish sites are all linked together if you watch Howard Crower stuff, So it's got the most thorough iconography that really we've got of the culture, because nothing was written down. Nothing was ever written down. So, that was found in Denmark, right? But it's got tin in it from Cornwall, and it's got metal from all around Europe in it and things. So, if you think about it, 1891, right? That's when it was dug up, right? 1891, and then that is a major. Well, it's a major significant event, really, globally, for that, you know, for that entire area of sort of study, you know, for all of, you know, France, Gaul, what you want to call it, France and Gaul, and Germany, Ireland as well, right? And if you think about it, 1891, and then sort of like that, you know, all what happened with, you know, everything what happened with what I've said in the other videos, right, was kind of leading up to, you know, 1900. So, you know, time goes, you know, time just go really, really, really slow. It goes pretty quick, you know. And then, say 91, 1995, I reckon that, right, I think that is really, 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 really significant, because then you get all the other things following after it, you know, which leads us into 1899, because it took a few years for all that were going off leading up to it, you know, wasn't it? Over like the 3 or 4 years before it, you know, you find the cauldron, and then you have a bit of a hoo-ha over it for a year or two, and then, you know, you've got people talking and that, and then, you know, then you end up having all these. Then this company gets formed, and they start, you know, banging more towers up, you know, and making more of a point. So I think that it's worth mentioning the date that was found. I mean, it could have been found any time. You know, it could have been found in 1976. It could have been found in 1985. It could have been found in 1642. It could have been found in 1200s. But it was found in 1891, right? And it's major significant. It's a mega significant find, that. So 1891, you know, 92, 93, 94, you know, and, you know, you'd only just basically got, like, the telephone was only, you know, invented around that sort of period, you know, otherwise, you know, you've only just got letters, you know, you ain't got proper, you know, motor vehicles and stuff like that like you have now. So, you know, communication is a little bit slower than it is now. So, you know, things don't happen quite as quickly. So I think that actual find is relevant to, you know, the things that I mentioned in the other videos, you know, on a national scale, really. Particularly if you think of it, you know, because William the Conqueror, you know, made all those, like Merthyr Castle he made the modern Bailey castles, which is like a mound shape with a tower, like a watchtower on the top of it. I got one in Murfield. So, and, you know, and then it's on one of the pictures on it, it's actually got mounted, you know, it's actually got mounted figures on horses, and that's one of the major plates, that, and they're actually riding on that horseman plate, they're actually riding on a baton, which is, you know, I mean, it makes you wonder, you know, it makes you question, is it even legitimate that, you know, did someone, you know, is it fake? You know, is it actually the real deal? Is it the real thing, or is it fake? You know, what are the chances of that? Oh, there's a couple of horses riding on a baton. You know, what? Whoa! I don't believe it. Well, then we've got, you know, a Bamberg cake popping up, and the next thing, you know, we've got the towers popping up everywhere. You know, which is, you know, designed like a Bamberg cake. It's just ridiculous. It's kind of like this sort of ongoing sort of one-upmanship thing, you know, that sort of like kind of eternal. I guess it's just development of ideas, isn't it? But everyone's, you know, I find it on the internet whenever you do something, then it's kind of like, you know, it's kind of this kind of like force of, you know, it's kind of like a game of, you know, like when you play a game of, you know, like when you put your hands and then people put in constantly forever pulling their hands out and putting them back on top again like that. But, you know, I think that's the date of that. I mean, it could have been found in the 1700s. It could have been found in the 1600s. It could have been found in 1973, but it wasn't. It was found in 1890, not 1830, not in 1840. It wasn't found in 1850. It was found in 1891, which is like very, very, very close to you know, we're talking, you know, few years, you know. It is significant. It's totally relevant and significant, you know. These like, you know, cause and effects of stuff. You know, there's something not right here, you know, because the date that Castle Hill was built and the whole circumstances around it and everything like that I've talked about in those other videos, right? On that plate I've got on my wall, right, with the horses, and when you're riding a horse, right, you're mounted, right? You mount a horse, and a hill is like a mount. It's got like a mount and a mount, right? And that plate on that cauldron, right, has got a baton on it, right? It has got a long baton, right, with the horses riding over it, right? Now, there's no other item being found. It is similar to the artwork of that period, but there's no other item found like it. There are no other cauldrons that we've found that are as significant or as elaborate as that. Now, I've been asking on the Irish Megalithic Research Group, what are the chances of it being fake, right? And they're all saying, you know, they're reckoning that it's highly unlikely that it is fake, that it's not going to be fake, right? And they said, oh, it's been tested here, it's been tested there, the peat bog has been tested and all this, right? That's fair enough, the science of it, but they haven't said it's absolutely impossible, but they're saying that it's, you know, it's difficult. But, you know, the thing is, right, with Ramsden, right, and the whole circumstances around Ramsden not wanting that tower to be built, the tower, right, that he didn't want it to be built, but he himself was a knight, right? He's a knight, but he's got an ancestor who spent some time in Tower of London, right? Under Charles, when it was King Charles, all right? Now, it was actually Ramsden's land, and that hill fort is quite important in this country. Now, we know that, I've talked about this in the other videos, he spent some time down Taunton as an MP, and he knew about Glastonbury Tor, which has had a tower built on it. And then this business group popped up that wanted to build tower. Now, they managed to get that baton-shaped tower in the Heights of Abraham, and then they were pushing for the Huddersfield one, and he was opposed to it. Now, he wasn't approached by the Queen or the royal family himself, but he was saying that these people or group of people were wanting to push it, and he wanted to into it, even though he's a knight, but he wasn't personally asked by the royal family and said no, because if the Queen asked him herself, then he'd probably have to say yes, right? But he's not feeling it. He likes hill forts and stuff like that. We've got one here at Huddersfield. It's quite an important one. He's been down Taunton area. He's seen Glastonbury and that, but he's not feeling having one here, right? Now, that cauldron, it was this guy, right? Let's go back a bit before that, right? Earlier on, right? Let's go back a little bit. Not that far, right? Prince Louis of Battenberg, that's his title, is Prince Louis of Battenberg, right? Just Battenberg, right? And they're saying that around when he got married, right, they're saying that that is the time the Battenberg cake was invented, right, which has got almonds and marzipan, right, and just happens to be kind of... it fits symbolically with that Castle Tower, actually, out of all the other designs that got proposed. I've said that in the other videos, right? So, he gets married first, right? Now, the name and title gets changed to Mountbatten, right? So, besides just being, right, Battenberg's a place, it's Germany, Germanic, right? So, it's Germany, Germanic, right? It's Battenberg, right? Now, we end up going into Mountbatten, so mount is mounted, and the meaning of mount is a hill or a mound, right? And also mounted on a horse, right? Now, after this marriage is there's no hard evidence of exactly when that Battenberg cake was invented. There's no exact hard evidence. They're saying it was to celebrate this marriage, right? And then a few years after, 2, 3, 4 years after, it starts getting published in these books, right? And that's when the cauldron gets found, and it just happens to be this big find, which is actually it's found in Denmark, which is, a little bit sticking off the top higher up than Germany, right? So it's still Germanic. They got this big find, and then it happens to be out of everything, right? It's a world historic find, right? What are the chances of one of the plates has mounted horses over a big baton? But what are the chances of that? Mounted horses over a baton, and the cauldron itself, when you turn it upside down, is like a mound. Or what chances of that? Ask Pope Francis. Now, this guy gets a brand new title. He's the first to have this title, the First Sea Lord, right? First Sea Lord. There is no one before him, right? There is no one before him who has had this title of Sea Lord. No one, right? It's created for him, right? And then there's other people who have it after, right? And he's actually really... He's actually going to be a relative of the Prince Philip, Duke of Edinburgh, right? And then we get into the Mountbattens anyway, because the word Louis is adopted by Mountbattens later on, right? And, there are other things to argue about that. The First Sea Lord, right? And then we go into all those... This sets the scene then. We've got this... There's a connection here, right? And the connection is, right, this marriage, right? And then we get Battenberg becomes Mountbatten, right? And then we get this Battenberg cake popping up, right? And then, while this Battenberg cake thing is, we're not sure on the exact date it's coming out, that cauldron's found, which happens to have mounted horses on a baton. Come on. And then we've got Ramsden, right? Ramsden is getting pushed. There's this group pops up, and then they build the tower at the Heights of Abraham, right? Which is baton-shaped, funnily enough. Oh, wow, a baton-shaped tower. What are the chances of that? But you can't even see anything from it hardly, right? At Matlock, right? And then this group then is pushing Ramsden, right? They're pushing Sir Ramsden, right, to have a tower on Castle Huddersfield. So, another, and their argument is that, this group's already had one at Matlock, and it's a good thing. So, we should have one here, right? Now, Ramsden, like I said, he's been an MP for Liberals all over, right? But Liberals aren't Toffs, aren't Tories, and they're not Whigs. Liberals are a different party, right? But he is knighted, right? Ramsden is a knight, and he was Sheriff for Yorkshire, and he's been an MP, so he's got an award, and he's not before the Queen and that. But he's not feeling this, he's not feeling getting a tower built on there, right? Then one of the guys who's been pushing for it, Tomlinson, ends up dying mysteriously at age 60, right? And then it all ends up, and then everyone ends up being persuaded to have it. And then they got all these different designs. Some of them are a little bit, and the argument is that for shelter as well, the main thing. And then the design that there was some Arthurian style designs and some different designs. And the design that ends up getting chosen happens to be a bit like symbolically to Bamberg cake, banged on there, and it didn't end up having a shelter after all. Well, not a 24-hour shelter like Glastonbury Tor. It ends up not having a shelter, not a 24-hour shelter, right? And the name Ramsden is to ram a den, ram someone's den. And Ramsden has got that land where Castle Hill is. He didn't want it, right? And it ends up having Queen Victoria Tower on it. So nothing like taking the fort. If there's anything like taking the fort, that's taking the fort, innit? And then it ends up, and later now it's in possession of Kirklees Council. It's not private. So, and Kirklees Council is, guess what? Her Majesty's government. So it is actually Her Majesty's government, Kirklees Council, who have got that hill fort now. So, and I think it's significant. I didn't know that Ramsden's ancestor, from what I've read, because it gets confusing because they all have the same name. It's like Louis. These Mountbattens have got a Louis name historically, and it's like in America they always have the same name as the fathers, and the fathers always have the same name, so they've all got the same name all the way through. So but back in Charles's time, King Charles, he was put in the Tower for treason. So his family, even though he's a knight and he's been awarded Ramsden, right? Historically, one of his ancestors is apparently, being bad. So, he's he has got prestigious position at an award, but he's got this, he's got this situation popped up where he's been pushed to have this tower, right, and he didn't want it. Now, if Queen Victoria herself or knighted him and has said, right, Ramsden, Mr. Ramsden, Sir Ramsden, I would like a tower built on Castle Hill in my commemorial. Then he's not going to, being Sir Ramsden, he's not going to say, "Oh, I'm sorry, Your Majesty, I don't want one." He won't say no, will he? Because of respect. So what I think happened is, this group popped up and he didn't even have any funding. It's not like, oh, where did that funding come from? I got slipped in from no. Oh, there's some money. They went and got other people to get the money. Other people had to go there to chip in and get the money, right? But there was some strings pulled somewhere, I think, and there's a leverage. The word leverage is a lever, and a lever is not unlike a baton. A baton is a lever, right? So to get leverage and have a lever, right? Because if someone's done something somewhere else, and it's all right, and then you've got more incentive of doing it, So this Heights of Abraham thing, Derbyshire one, it's all, I sympathise with the Irish Megalithic Research Group when they're all very kind of sensible, analytical scientists and investigators, where you pick up a stone out of the floor and you look at it and you test it with chemicals, and this is from this period of 3000 BC, no doubt, by carbon dating. They're all like zoomed in the glasses of microscope, but they don't ever. I mean, and that's totally to the right. All this scientific, empirical measurements and rulers, right? But we've got evidence now, right? That this is just an example, right? With this example, right, we know that the chalk man with the club, right? And the phallic penis, right? That's not prehistoric. It's not prehistoric. That it looks like it is with the white horse, but it's not as old as the white horse. It's not prehistoric. We know that the white horse is genuine and authentic because there's a lot of horses on the old Celtic coins, right? Because it's a symbol they had. But that club, that chalk guy with the club, they've dated that. And now they're saying that is after 1066, which, it's hardly a Celtic period or era, is it? Although when you look at the Raffra book, it says that in Ireland, right, they were still building some ring forts like Raffra over in Ireland in the early medieval period, right? But that chalk, England got conquered, right? And then that chalk drawing pops up, which is purporting to look like Celtic style, right? Just when they've been conquered, right? Just after they've been conquered. Now, and his name just happens to be William. Now, what is the term Willie is for phallic penis? Now, if that is correct, if the dating on that chalk man is correct and true, it is post 1066, in that period just after 1066 when we've been conquered, it seems to me that Who else would do such a bold statement in the plains in the south of England of a country you've conquered other than the person who's conquered it? Do you know what I mean? Who else or why else would you do it, a chop man, in that period? It's not prehistoric. It's almost like a joke or gesture, you know? Now, this is the thing with these sort of people. What scientists in labs with lab coats and glasses and spectacles and test tubes and chemistry experiments and universities, very serious, very serious. You know, I'm just an amateur who's got a Yorkshire dialect. I don't go into the Irish Stones Megalithic Research Group and quote bibliographies and research papers by, you know, precision, exact person, by precision date, blah, 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 blah. Because there's a certain part of research and a certain part of investigation which is not swinging far to the hard right of ultimate empirical evidence and seriousness. There is a part of research and investigation of the human mind and human behaviour. Lads joking in a schoolyard, you know, people picking fights in a school corridor, you know, people with a career as a comedian, you know, the drunken man, the human being as a thinking creature of humour and rationality, right? Who does jokes and pranks and practical things, you know, who goes into science labs and, you know, moves test tubes around, you know, and hides things like chemical things, just, you know, like in the brand new James Bond film, No Time to Die, in that lab when he does that, you know. And when I'm swinging far to the left, which is all ideas and the mind, the imagination, but not the imagination of complete fiction, we're talking about looking at evidence from events, from names, from the social events of the times, what was occurring, what happened here, what happened then, what were these people's objectives, what do they want to do, what's the behaviour like, yeah? The times of these occurring and the dates, Mountbatten, first sea captain, marriage, created, the Battenberg comes in. Oh, then the cauldron pops up out of the earth. Oh, it happens to be from, you know, this guy's Germanic. Oh, it's over in the Germanic side, but it's Celtic. And, oh, it's got mounts on a batten on it. What are the chances? And there's one of the plates is missing from it, and it just happens to be the plate that isn't missing. There's one with Mountbattens on it. And then the next thing, a couple of years later, they were trying to get those towers built for a while, because they were building the Heights of Abraham, one with the batten on, at Matlock first. Then they're pushing for Ramsden. They try to ram his den with banging this tower on, and it just happens to be that the place the tower's built, and it's a major ill thought that, you know, it's got a prestigious position, and, you know, the entire setting of it is, you know, even though the Heights of Abraham are very deep and it's all valleys and stuff like that, it's not historically spectacular in that sense, right? You've got Armonbury. The village is called Armonbury. And not only that, the Battenberg has got marzipan flavour, which is flavoured with almonds. And also, you know, in the area of Ramsden is Marsden. And Mars is meant to be the colour red for the planet Mars, which is meant to do with, you know, will and power and all that. Marzipan. It just, to me, I mean, it's not this. If you say to me, you know, you're just conjuring up delusional ideas and random stuff. Yeah, but it's not though. Line up the dates, right? If you get the dates out and the names right, and the fact that people like to design things and do ideas that has a meaning in it to make a statement, whether it's a fashion statement or a power statement or a dominant statement, right? Just like when, what other evidence have we got for stuff like that? People making a point and putting something on the land to make a gesture is the chalk man, which turns out to be not prehistoric. It turns out to be done just after William the Conqueror came over and conquered us. which ends up putting us into the lineage of where we are now. Do you know what I mean? So I'm not saying that cauldron is fake or isn't fake, but what I am saying is the mind boggles at the odds and chances of Mountbatten's popping up, and then suddenly we've got this rare one of a kind find. Not like we're finding loads of them. I mean, we've got loads of dolmens all around France. It would be hard to fake dolmens because there are literally thousands of them. You don't go around putting thousands of those up. Now we know those are legitimate. We know those are authentic because they're all over the place, right? But this cauldron, where are the other cauldrons? Did they get melted down? Have they not been found yet? Why is there only one? And it's Celtic, but it's in Germanic, so that puts some sort of Germanic kind of authority over the Celts, And what does it happen to be? Here comes Mountbatten. Here comes along Mountbatten. And then, shortly after, then we get, the Ilford gets mounted. It just, and the one at Glastonbury anyway, Glastonbury Tower, we'll put on there when William the Conqueror came over anyway. Which, in fact, you might as well put, it's not the original Glastonbury Tower, is it? Because it got knocked down in an earthquake. There was an earthquake, the first one fell down, so they're saying, and it got rebuilt, right? But that, according to the archaeologists, that chalk man is only from around the same time as Glastonbury Tower anyway, the first Glastonbury Tower. Mountbatten, what are the odds, What are the odds of it? What are the chances? If there was a narrative that you couldn't make, and if the dates, were, if the Mountbattens, got married in, 1450, and then the Mountbatten cake was invented in 1520, and then we had the gunship cauldron, in the 1800s, and then, in 2015, then they built, the Castle Hill, just shortly after they put a baton on Abrahamites, and fair enough, but we get notice how we get perfect synchrology, right? The perfect order of events, right? Within, a year, then the next year, then 2 years after, then the other one, then another year. It's all ordered, and it fits. And the names and meaning of it all are lending towards the superiority of a certain names and rulers who seem to be stamping themselves into the history books. And funnily enough, on the current Doctor Who, right? On the current Doctor Who, when Jodie Whittaker is actually from Huddersfield, what Chibnall's done, Chris Chibnall, he's talking about, wanting to change and rewrite history, They've been, the theme of the programme is that they've been, trying to change and rewrite history or whatever. So, and that seems to me to be what happened with that chalk man. Because, if unless the carbon dating, is false, but they're saying that they tested it and it's saying that it's, just after William the Conqueror come over. So it's not a prehistoric drawing in chalk. That's a fake one, and it's a symbol of dominance. And it's actually he's holding a bat, and he's holding a club. He's holding a baton, a club. So that's another Mountbatten pun, So I'm not saying that I'm right. I'm not saying that I'm wrong. But what I'm saying is, I've got a right to, raise the matter. I've got a right to say, this is the thing. Scientists are all easily too convinced, Scientists do tests, and then it's all, Mark Parker Pearson, and, it's all Howard Curtis doing the measurements and all this and that, It's all, there's no doubt. But they're too right. They don't come up at the lefty bit, and, they don't kind of, it's not fake. Well, who would fake it? Well, I'm telling you who would fake it now. I'm telling you who would fake it. Who'd draw a big chalk man with a big penis and a big club? Who would draw a big chalk man just post 1066 with a big club and a big penis after the country's just been conquered? Oh, William, what's that name referred to short for? this is the thing with scientists. They've got no, maybe they do their own type of jokes, but they don't zoom out and, they don't kind of consider the, why do you want to put a tower on there? Huh? Why do you want to put a tower on the hill for? Why? Why do you want to put a tower? Why do you put a tower on the hill for? Why do you want to put a baton on Abraham Heights? Why? 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 Because it's Ramsden's. Ramsden has it, and he's with his wife, and but he's not. He's got naughty ancestors. They got locked up in the Tower for treason. And he's a knight of England, and he's doing very well for himself. He needs to know his place. He's a sea captains and the sea lords, and he needs to know his place. And that's his den. And he's you kneel and before your rulers, and we're going to put a tower on there. And we have ways of making you have a tower on there, whether it's Tomlinson drops down, or whatever, this is it. This is what I don't like about it. And this is what happens when you investigate planning corruption on the roads and highways and find out that it's been done unlawfully corrupt, and we've been misled and people have been making money out of it and we're being punished, and we know our place. We've got to be told this place and know his place. This is the problem with it, And this is why... this is why Jeremy Corbyn doesn't sing the national anthem, and then he gets booted out of the Labour Party, and it's Sir Keir Starmer. Sir Keir Starmer. Yes, Sir Keir. Yes, Sir Keir Starmer. Yes, sir. All your honour, sir. All your honour, Keir. And not our honour, because we're having his rights taken away now. We haven't got any rights, even though it's illegal to abridge our rights. Then, tough, What does that mean? Nothing, because he's stripping him away. Keir, aren't you? So you carry on, Keir Starmer. World domination, Oh, it's Keir Starmer. What are the chances of that? Is there a cauldron popping out of the ground, with a star on it? No, but we've got Keir. The Keir Company. Oh my God. Keir. New model army, doing all the roads and highways of England, illegally, with illegal road signs, illegally, who was head of the CPS when they should have been finding out about this, Sir Keir Starmer. Can't prosecute Keir. We can't do anything about Ramsden because he's been knighted, but, Her Majesty's got ways of making Ramsden, put a tribute on that hill, and if Tomlinson has to drop down, maybe, then, knights can be persuaded, I might end up in the Tower of London. Oh, well, easy. He might end up in the Tower, he might end up in Victoria Tower, never mind Tower of London, because that's the new den that's being rammed, Fuck me. There's something else that is really, really unusual here, and, when Howard Cross does his investigations, it's all, like, measurements and everything like that, and it's all based on actual geographical positions and, evidence on site through measurements, what is actually there. It's objective, and that's what you call, the right, whereas my sort of reflections and contemplation is completely far left, right? But it's still valid when you're investigating and looking at things and you're wanting to, if you're trying to investigate and think about what other people might have thought and what ideas might have got people thinking themselves about ideas. It's all about, it's not like digging up, flints out of the ground and this and that out of the ground. It's like digging things out of thoughts and, out of things that people have done and dates and times and events, Kind of like, it's like investigation work, but without being on site and, evaluating things through chemistry and science. It's through evaluating things, psychologically and it's the ideology. Well, it's ideological investigation. That's what it is. It's ideological investigation, right? And if there's nothing there, then there's not there to, if you don't find out, or if you do find anything and it's worth noting, then, you've got something that's worth noting. Now, I'm on this subject of this Battenberg, right, and Mountbatten, because like I found that there it's worth thinking about, because I found things that seem to a pattern. If there's no, it's true that you can say, oh, well, you can find patterns in anything. Well, you could say that Howard Kerr's finding patterns in stuff. He's finding these, you know, these triangles, and you could say, well, any line you draw between any two places forms a line, and you could just draw a rectangle grid over it. You know, you could, and then when he's saying, you know, well, these places line up over great distances, longitude and latitude, you know, but you know, is it coincidence or not? So even he is saying, as an expert, geographical measurements and, you know, geometry, even he's saying, you know, is it too much to be a coincidence, or is it not? So even if you're on the far right and you've got empirical measurements, then you still question, you know, is it, you know, he's still saying, you know, is it too much there for it, you know, to be, you know, was it planned out? So on the far left, when you go into ideological investigation and you're finding these things, you know, that patterns in things, you know. So, right, I'm interested in the Gundestrup Cauldron now and the date that it was found, right? And the reasons for that are these. The reasons that I give, the legitimate reasons that I give for being interested in that is on the basis of the cauldron was found only a few years before this group of people started to wanting to build these towers, right? And particularly on an ancient hill fort that was significant. And the tower ends up being shaped, you know, like a Battenberg-shaped design. We've got the Battenberg cakes invented around then, and we've got the Mountbattens around and getting this, you know, the first sea captain things created. So, and then on the cauldron, you know, I mean, on the cauldron, it could have been anything. It could be 3 monkeys and a chicken. It could have been, you know, 3 dogs and a butterfly. But what is it? It is 4 mounted horses on a batten. Mounted on a batten, on a giant batten. And it's the cauldron itself turned upside down. It's a mound. Now, if it wasn't that, if there wasn't 4 mounted horses on a big batten, then I won't be interested in looking into it any further, right? But seeing as there are 4 mounted horses on a batten, right, I am interested in looking into it. So, the cauldron was found in Gundestrup, which is in the middle of that. I'll put that island bit in the middle here, right? It was found, well, actually, that little white dot when I move my finger around on the map, right? It was found in the middle of there, right? Now, in a peat bog, supposedly. Now, Mountbatten, right? Look at this. Now, if I go straight diagonally down from there, from where the Gundestrup Cauldron was found in a peat bog, right? Straight down in a straight line, right? Look at that. And I've actually only been to Germany once, and I went to Cologne, right, which is... Cologne's there. I've been to Cologne, but that's not relevant to this conversation anyway. But so what are these 2 points here that are straight, exactly straight down from Gundestrup in a straight line down from the landmass? What are these 2 places? Well, they are both places in Germany that are called Battenberg, right? Because when I typed in where's Battenberg in Germany, there were 2 places, right? Now, the main Battenberg place is here, right? This is the main Battenberg place, and this is actually on the edge of where some hills start, funnily enough, right? Which is, and I haven't actually looked at the map yet on the terrain, on the actual proper, you know, so you can see the buildings and that. This is the terrain view. And the terrain view already shows me that Battenberg is on the edge of where some hills start. If you look, when you've got Allendorf there, this is lower land, right? And then when you get to Battenberg, there's all hills, which is like Huddersfield on the edge of the Pennines, right? Now, that's the main place that's called Battenberg, right? and there's a notable hill there, but I hadn't even actually looked at it properly because I hadn't even got to that yet. But I'm wanting to start doing this, telling you this, right? Now, the other place there's another place called Battenberg, which is 2 hours, 37 minutes away, right? And you go straight down, continuing in a straight line from that Battenberg, right? And then bend slightly at the end, right? Only a little bit, right? And this place is it's not like the town called Battenberg, but it's an area of a place, right? This is like it's Berg Battenberg, right? And there's a park as well. So we've got this place called Battenberg, right? Oh, the Friedhof Battenberg, okay? Now, what I noticed is this, right? What I've noticed is close by to this Battenberg place, if it pops up on the map now, is, or was, if I can find it, what that's doing there. Oh, there it is, right. There's a place, if you look where the red dot is, right, this second smaller Battenberg place, right, there's a place there called Worms. Funny name. Worms, right? There's a place called Worms, right? And that's where, and it happens to be, out of all places in the whole of Germany, when you go straight down, then you get to here, and then you sharply turn to the side, right? Is where it's Worms on this bit here, this long straight line, right? Near the small Battenberg, right? Now, the funny thing is, coincidence or not, right? On the horseman plate, on that cauldron, I have got it on my wall, and I actually study it all the time. And I also do, always wonder whether it's legitimate or not. It's always on my mind, as well as when I'm always studying that plate, because it's my favourite plate, as well as the St. Honoris plate. I always do wonder if it's legitimate or not. Was it real? Is it legitimate or not? Now, that baton on that plate, at the end of it, it's got an open mouth, like a worm. And I've actually done some videos and talks about symbology and significance in that, and like being a big worm. Because you've got the snake also in front of the horseman that's got a bird on his head, going off to the right. Yeah? And then on the St. Honoris plate, you've got him actually holding the snake, which is like a big worm. So there are significantly worms on there, and if you interpret that plate, and if you're and when it's got like little magic mushroom plants glowing around the people who are holding onto it, right? When you go look for those little mushrooms, you get little worms growing inside them anyway. Because anyone who collects them knows that, and it's well known and stated, right? So there happens to be on that cauldron plate with the Battenberg mounted battens on the Battenberg plate, there happens to be a giant worm as well, and it's straight. It's going straight across, right? It's dead straight. And what this line happens to be here, right, is dead straight across, horizontal, and it's perfectly straight geographically, right? Perfectly straight. And then you go sharp. Well, this is by road, though. I mean, obviously, they won't have had roads, back then. But these are probably main roads that have been in use, right? I just can't believe that. Up by Frankfurt, and then you go straight up, it goes to the other Battenberg. Now, is this place on the edge of the hills? Well, it is as well, because there's hills there, right? It's right on the edge of hill. The other Battenberg. Look at that. It's right on where the hills start, like Huddersfield and the Pennines. What are the chances of that? Both Battenbergs are as well. It's almost. Do you know what it's like? it's almost like in Sherlock Holmes, right, when someone would leave a riddle. You know, like in Sherlock Holmes, when someone leaves a riddle and then, you know, like the arch-villain leaves a riddle and you've got to solve it, yeah? It's almost like that. I mean, I couldn't have made this up myself. I could not have made this up myself in fantasy. And another thing that interests me is this, right? This is, you know, what I call, you know, I'm investigating, I'm doing like an ideological investigation now, investigating the ideology behind it, the ideas, you know, where ideas coming from, right? And the themes and symbols, right? Is there any connections between these things, right? Now, we know well that in the 1800s and the late 1800s, we also know that, funnily enough, there's a character made up called Sherlock Holmes who investigates crimes. And in one of those stories I know off the top of my head, because I've got the videos, right, is the Speckled Band. And in the Speckled Band, right, which is a Sherlock Holmes story, the Speckled Band, it's a snake. And they put the snake through the window and it comes through and gets him. Now, that's on that play of the Cauldron. The big snake, which is the ban, which is what the horsemen are riding over, and then you've got the snake on the other thing. Now, he might not have had one, but I mean, what are the chances of that? How come this isn't, you know, in the shape of a letter S? It could have been in the shape of anything or nothing. Could have been shaped in a noughts and crosses board. It could have been in shape of, you know, a triangle, a rectangle, or anything. But notice, it's a straight line, right? Worms. It's just, and then it's on the edge of the hills, and it's on the edge of the hills here. Now, what's that got to do with anything? And it's perfectly, Barnberg is perfectly underneath where Gunderstrup is anyway. It's directly up from there. Exactly in line with Gunderstrup, as if it's even pointing towards it. Now, this is a thing, right? This is like all hypothetical now, right? Because I'm not David Icke, right? But, how about this, right? If, this is a big if, right? If I was a German family, a Viscount or a Lord or someone like that, or a Mountbatten, who was coming over and marrying someone in England in the royal family, and if I'd already got a cake that was going to be celebrated and everyone's going to eat in the country that was a tribute to the Mountbattens, right? And if I wanted to establish myself in the history of the country, right? Or even in the whole Celtic history of northwestern Britain, and if I wanted to state my dominance in and show off, right? If I wanted to, right? But also have power to Germanic people, right? And have Germanic people superior out of all the Celtic people there are, out of the Irish, the English, and even the Gauls, right? The French. If I wanted to have the superior of Germany, right? Over them all, right? But my own name as well was Mountbatten, right? If I wanted to weave that into it and be flamboyant and show off, right? What I'd do is, I'd get someone to make a cauldron that was Celtic style, right? And I get him to bury it, not in England, because if it got buried in England and it got found in England, then it meant England's better. England's Druids were, the greatest of all of, northwestern Europe, right? So what I'd do is, if I was Mountbatten, or if my ancestors had come from, Germany or whatever, or happens to be William the Conqueror came over, what I'd do is, I would put my name into the pictures and symbols on there, Mountbatten, right? And I would get someone to do some, get a specialist, an archaeologist or some image specialist to come up with some images for me, right? And design it, right? And my ancestry and heritage, right, and lineage going back, I'd make them put them into it. Now, when you start doing that in your mind and in your head, right, and if you decided to, if you decided to bury it in a peat bog in Gunderstrup, right, when you're doing these things, when people do stuff like that, it's hard for them not to put some truth into it, because it kind of just happens idiosyncratically. It's how human beings work, right? And if it was connected to Mountbatten, right, there would be something in there, and maybe even the person who designed it and did it, like, you know, might put a clue in there or a hint, you know, they might give the game away. Sort of in the same way that, you know, when Russians cheated in the Olympics, right? The Russians could have got away with not cheating in the Olympics. But what happened is, one of the scientists who did the steroids research and all that, he ended up dobbing him in, didn't he? That's what happened. And it all ended up, you know, the Russians ended up getting banned. So, in a way, there was a whistleblower in the whole scheme of things. So, if I was going to professionally, you know, if the person who designed it for these people, if they wanted to do that, right, then they might sort of put some in it, so somebody might be able to, you know about it or trace it. Now, if you're going to do that, in a lineage and lineal sense, there is a line there between both battens, straight down from where the cauldron is, right? And there's a worm on that plate, and there's even a place called Worms there where it's bent. So, you know, this is all there's a bit of psychology in this, and there's a bit of, you know, a bit of ideology, right? But it's there, you know, and, you know, the straight line on that plate with the mounted battens, and if you think of it batten to batten, start to finish, right? You got 4 horses riding off, they go from one place to another place, start to finish, right? And this is between 2 places. Well, whenever you draw 2 places, there's a straight line between them, isn't there? You know. But the thing is, though, I mean, look at Germany's. You know, Germany is quite a flat place, but, you know, particularly here, it's definitely exactly where you go to a hilly place from quite a flat place. Look at that. There's a significant change in landscape, exactly like there is at Huddersfield and Castle Hill, right? All the way down there, down that line there. And also there too, look, at this other Battenberg. Look at that. It's right on the edge of the hills, like Castle Hill is. Now, if you're thinking, you know, from the time when, you know, Mountbatten shows up on the scene, right, is a certain window period. And then in there, you've got the marriage, you've got the Battenberg cakes going around, then you've got these towers wanting to be built. I think they had an eye on that site in the first place, and they wanted to get something on there, right? And they were trying to get talk, because they were trying to persuade, they were trying to persuade John William, right, to do it, and he want up for it at first. So Ramsden, John William Ramsden, right, they were trying to persuade him, not they, but, you know, a group of, you know, I don't think they'd have asked him themselves, you know, because, you know, I think they got other people, you know, to do it. So he went up for it, even though he'd been a minister, a Liberal at, you know, Taunton, which lends for Glastonbury Tor, right? So that's another thing, you know. And the thing with Glastonbury Tor is that, you know, you actually can't go up inside it now because it's all hollow inside, and there used to be one floor inside it with a wooden floor, but that's not even there anymore. There's nowhere to climb up it. So you can't actually go up there and see any views. And I think there might have been some wooden doors on it originally, but now there aren't, and you can go in there for shelter, but you can't climb up anyway. You can go in there for shelter all the time, you know? And supposedly one of the reasoning behind justifying building that hill at Castle Hill was because, you could go for shelter, but you can't go for shelter now. It's impossible because it's always locked all the time. So, it's very strange. And then, but the thing is, even back then, right? Even back then, around, when it's been built 1900, and then we've got the Cauldron found, then we've got Castle Hill built, Even then, you've got these Sherlock Holmes stories, where he's meant to be a detective and find things out. And you get this Speckled Band story popping up, with the snake, serpent, and he's meant to be an investigator. Maybe, were people suspicious about it anyway back then? It just seems, I know that, no matter what you do, even if there were two places in Germany called Battenberg, what are the chances of those two places in Germany called Battenberg? What are the odds of them when you draw a line between one Battenberg and the other Battenberg that is exactly in a dead straight line going up to where the Cauldron was found at Gunstrup? I mean, what are the odds on that? And I don't think that I'm the only person who would have looked into this, because and the type of people who look into this were the type of people who write books like Sherlock Holmes. I mean, people are writing TV programs with puzzles like this in all the time. This is what BBC people do all the time. They sit at home and do this stuff what I'm doing in my head, and they do it, for a hobby, think of stuff like this. They don't look at things in real life and do it. These are the people who are writing police and crime dramas, people who are coming up with the story of the Speckled Band. I mean, the only people who would come up with the story of the Speckled Band, there's people who come up with ideas like this, and then there's the people like, then what happens is that, but that, why would I even think of the idea for somebody to put a cauldron there? Because that's the type of thing that somebody would think up if they were thinking up of something to do. Because that's the type of thing that they think up. It's kind of like, it's got that artificial, it's got stuff in it that are worth conjuring up to do the idea, if you see what I mean. If you're going to do an idea, right, then, if you're going to do an idea, right, for something, then it's got to be a good idea. And if someone's thought of it, then if you see what I mean, basically, if you're going to think of a puzzle, or if you're going to think of something, if someone thinks something up and it has been thought up and planned, what I'm trying to say is it has a pattern to it that you can follow, and you've got to have a reason for doing it, a motive for doing it. You've got to have a reason and motive for doing it. You've got the idea itself will leave a trail that can be followed, like, it's like when archaeologists are looking for things in the floor. The only reason they could find where the Stonehenge bluestones came from is because, they went to Pembrokeshire and they found the stone circle where they'd been. Unless somebody went over there and somebody went and actually made some imprints in the ground and everything like that and made it look like the stones were there. But they're saying that they found the exact crop of stones where they're from, and it's definitely, that is the actual place where the stones are from, because it's the same type of stone. So it clearly is obvious that. Do you know what I mean? So, if someone was paid off to, come up with the cauldron, and if it was planted, if it was a fake, did the person who was behind it leave some clues in there, or did they accidentally and without realizing it, when they were trying to think of ideas, just where they got their ideas to do the pictures from were maybe they were thinking about the person they were working for and doing it for, if it was Mountbatten, and then they might have known there were two places called Battenberg, and then there's a straight line between them. So that just happened to be one of the things that were subconsciously playing on the mind when they did it. That's why they done the straight line from point to point. It's mounted battens on a batten going from one place to another place. It didn't have to be that. It could have been anything. It could have been a wolf climbing up a tree. You know, it could have been a monkey scratching its bum. It could have been, you know, a butterfly landing on a flower. It could have been, you know, it could have been anything. But notice it is one straight line going from places distant between each other with 4 mounted figures and a big barn. You know, and it was found in Gundestrup. And there's 2 points there between 2 barns at the edge of hills that you don't like Castle Hill, pointing straight up at Gundestrup. Right? Now, to me, and then the thing with Castle Hill is this: that group who wanted to build that tower, right, who were pushing on for Ramsden to build that tower, they built one first, right, to get leverage to push the idea. And it is it's even not that much of a fancy job either. It's only a basic tower, a lot cheaper version. They did it at Abraham Heights, right? And Abraham Heights is somewhere that's high up heights, right? Abraham Heights. It's lots of deep valleys in Derbyshire, right? And this is next to heights. Both these places are next to heights. And further to that, it's baton shape. It actually, that particular tower is an exact baton, like you pass to each other in the Olympics, pass the baton. You know, what are the odds on that? And you might say, oh, well, they have these coincidences, but come on, surely not that much of a coincidence. There's coincidences and there's coincidences, you know. There are these coincidences, you know, there are certain coincidences until you accumulate a certain number of coincidences when, you know, it goes past the average number of coincidences. Like, you know, you've got a certain number of coincidences that are coincidence, but then when you start getting more and more coincidences, then you start thinking, well, you know, the amount of coincidences in there is more than your average number of coincidences. Do you know what I mean? So, you know, that is one, you know, it's there. You know, you can't say it's not there, what I'm saying, because, you know, or else it wouldn't be there, would it, you know? So, you know, that's what I'm saying. I don't know whether that cauldron is fake or not, and everyone in the megalithic research group swears that, you know, it's highly, extremely unlikely to be a fake. But there are people in there saying that it's not impossible, depending on where you get the metal from, what the style you're doing, how good you are at, who was there when these people found it, who actually did find it, did they pay someone to go there and find, you know, is it all arranged, you know? So I'd like that cauldron to be authentic and real, you know? It would be cool if it was really a Celtic object, but I cannot help but notice that these things are unusual and strange, and in the circumstances, and the main thing is this is the thing that really gets me, is this, right? Unless the scientists are wrong, and we're getting onto science now, not me, not amateur me, we're getting onto the scientists now, right? The scientists are telling us that chalk man drawing with the big club and the baton, they're telling us, unless they're lying as well and they're wrong, they're saying that is not prehistoric artwork, right? They're saying it's not. They're saying that is, you know, posing as a prehistoric artwork, but it was put there after 1066, right? Now, who turned up in 1066 and built, you know, and then we get the tower on Glastonbury Tor, and then we get all the little, you know, like Merfield Castle and the little hills that are kind of copying off the Celtic culture hills and putting a tower on top of them. Someone's coming over and liking towers. Willie Conqueror, right? And he seems to like willies as well, because he's drawing big chalk men with big willies holding batons, clubs, right? So, and it's not an original prehistoric one, it's fake. So, you know, it seems to me, if the scientists are telling the truth, and that's not me being wrong now, this is the scientists, whether the scientists are wrong or not telling the truth, not me, right? It seems to me that if you just come over and conquered an island and you wanted to state your, you know, authority there, then you draw, you know, he's making a point of it by drawing a big guy coming over with a club, you know. putting it down in history. And that is what's happening here with this this that I'm talking about here. This claim, well, not claim that I'm making. This thing that I'm looking into. It's the same motives. The similar motives behind it. It's it's authority, power. It's it's to do with putting messages out there, putting yourself in history and all that in it. So I didn't say this. I didn't even know where Battenberg was until how long have I been talking? I've been talking to you for 31 minutes. So an hour ago, I didn't know where Battenberg was, and now I know there were two Battenbergs, and they're point to point there, pointing straight up at Gunstrup. So you tell me what you think, and then I'll let you have a think about it. Listen to my videos. I'm not saying I'm right. I'm not saying I'm right. I'm saying that I've got something in here seems a bit unusual, and what's your opinion? Okay, so this time let's read this. So let's do the reading of this. If we were gonna, if it was gonna support my hypothesis from the videos, right? How would it fit if the person who'd been commissioned to do it, whether they'd been told they were commissioned to do it or not, or whether they were exactly told what it were for, they surely must have been known they were creating something that's Celtic style. I don't know whether they specifically know who it was for, if it was a fake, right? Let's say they did sort of know, or at least have an idea about it, right? And let's say that my hypothesis fits. So this is how we'd read that. Would be, it's to do with the Mountbattens, Battenberg, right? So if we're just going to conjure up some sort of Celtic, Germanic myth thing. I mean, I've studied this for a long time, and there's lots of interpretations you can put into this. The person who did it clearly was clever, but let's just see if there's anything playing on their mind that could reveal it being a fake or not through ideological investigation from what I've found on the map from a geographical point of view. Well, from a geographical point of view, we know how Crowhurst has mapped all the stone circles and everything, and he's found out that everything does align with the it aligns with the altitude and longitude by his methods that he's been using. So that would have the altitude and longitude line in it, which would let us know that in the 1800s that these people, the elite, knew that as well, not just Howard Crowhurst, or even the military knew that, or the army and whoever, the people who have been studying those sites anyway, what they gathered. So that lends the altitude and longitude between the two Mountbattens. Now, how that figures into here, there's the main Mountbatten is at the north, right? So the main Mountbatten. Now the other place that's Mountbatten is just after that place called Worm, and it's in a dead straight line going down, and then you turn right, and then it's across a little bit. Now, so this sort of goes. I mean, they're travelling from one place to another place. So you could say it's one Mountbatten place to the other Mountbatten place. And here we've got the batons, and each one of these, it's like holding a baton. And then that place that's just next to the other Mountbatten is called Worm. And then you've got the little worm mouth there. So, and then these are mounted, and riding on the baton. Then you've got the snake going out in front there. So that's how, and then you've got the high ground and the low ground. Now we know that at the main Mountbatten place, it's next to where the hills are, the high ground, just like at Huddersfield by the Pennines, next to the Pennines. And also at the other place as well, it's next to the high ground and the low ground. Okay, now if the orders were coming, right, so the orders from the elite or the Mountbattens or whatever, the royalty, or who knows, someone's giving the orders for him to make this item, and even if he does or doesn't know exactly who it's coming from, And then it's actually the guy himself making it. You know, this is the item that he's making. Although he's done it as if it's a drum. You know, he's banging it on a drum. This could even be, you know, putting yourself into it. The guy who's making it, saying he's better at making these things, and he's a better artist and can make it really and forge better than the other people. You know, make it more realistic and authentic. So that fits as well. Notice how it fits. But saying that, a lot of things do fit this. In fact, it's very, very good, and there have been so many interpretations I can put into this. I've been studying it in the belief and the hope that it's a legitimate piece from 100 BC or whatever. And, you know, it's got tin in it from Cornwall, it's got metal in it from Europe, you know, but, you know, they could have sourced that metal from other places and reused it or whatever. It's a brilliant piece, and so is that one. I love it. But it's never that I've ever thought, you know, it's completely legitimate, you know, because, you know, I'm the sort of person who just don't believe everything, you know. I study it and I like it, but I always do wonder if it's legitimate or not. And it's funny how that the theory of the actual Battenberg places, and if it was planted at Gunderstrup, and it fits with the longitude and latitude, which is the study of what Howard Crowe's been studying longitude and latitude on the real sites. The real sites have got longitude and latitude all mapped out. So, you know, that's you know, with the actual, that's showing you the plate itself. Yeah, and I forgot to say that, you know, that if someone else had thought that as well, you know, if there ever was a detective well known in the 1800s, it's Sherlock Holmes, a fictional one, and one of his the most famous stories he does is a speckled band where the snake creeps in. So if someone else had been suspicious about that cauldron and looked into the Mountbattens and Battenberg, they might have found that themselves, and there's a snake, you know. So you've got, and that's just a Sherlock Holmes story a fictional story from the 1800s, but he's a detective and he solves crimes. Similar things to this type of level of thing that he does, you know. And obviously, you know, it could have even been you know, if we're going to say that theory is legitimate and holds up, could have even been a wedding present, that fine for the Mountbattens getting in on the act, you know, Mountbattens in on the act, and it could have been that find that people could have been a sort of wedding present and welcoming them in, you know. And that Sherlock Holmes speckled band story could have been thrown in there anyway, you know. They could have arranged that to be written, you know, and sort of debunk it or whatever. Well, not debunk this, but, you know, get people distracted with speckled band story and Sherlock Holmes, you know. You see, these figure into it as well, and I wouldn't have known this if I hadn't have watched the video on them, because in the 1700s, which is when this one at the top 2 foot here was rebuilt. It's a folly because it's far too narrow to actually be a real round tower. Real bell towers were much wider. Now, the actual real ones are in Scotland and Ireland. Although we're not too... There could have been ones in England, but not many. Now, those... There was a book circulating, a printed paper circulating. There's a lecturer does a really, really good talk about Irish ramp towers. It's on YouTube. I've actually probably got it on the website somewhere, and he says that there was this paper going around telling people about them and showing them the designs of them. Now, some people in England, I know this because in some of the groups, people were showing me photos of them, like random ones on private land and private estates, and it was just the top section like that. Just like the one at Grange Moor, there are other people who have private estates who built them. Now, people who will build one of those as a folly on their land that's not an original one, kind of like on the emblem for, you know, on the Everton football badge, yeah, they only people who would build those, it's kind of, it's a tribute in a way to the Irish ones, right? And to Scottish ones, unless it's a joke. It's either for or against. If you want to say if it's against, you could say that, just lopping the top off it is sort of, but you wouldn't even, I don't think that if you were against it, you wouldn't even have one at all in the first place, right? So it's kind of like a little version of it, So now, on this Ramsden area, Ramsden estate, we've got the Beaumont one. I'm pretty sure it says Richard Beaumont on that one there. That is, I think that this were the people who were identifying themselves with the Roundheads, or at least they were in opposition to the Tories, right? Now, that Ramsden guy, he's in this area and he is a liberal. So surely, and what is the Liberty Caps is, the even word Liberty Caps is for liberal, isn't it? So it's if you are a rich person who has got land and estates, and you're free to support whichever party you want in Parliament. You've got different parties with different views and different oppositions. They would have one of these on the land. And that's the paper that went around in the 1700s were promoting, showing people pictures of them, the Irish ones, and some people were building them and putting them on the land. And I know there are more of them on private land and private estates because of the people, only because of on Facebook, people have gone, oh yeah, there's, people in Shropshire and places like that have shown me photos of them on private estates and land, which, and they're not actual original ones from, the between, whenever it was, between 800 and 1100 or whatever, they were just follies. But there was a reason for the folly, because people supported it, and it was a symbol to symbolise affiliation politically, you see. So you got to figure that into it. Now that's 1700s, probably going towards the end of the 1700s, and then you come into the 1800s, and then you getting these things are happening. These things are happening. You see, when you get those phone lines put in, and everyone's getting these phone lines put in, notice up in Glasgow, which is Scotland, Glasgow, that fireman comes up with a design for that phone box to have for public use, which is kind of modelled around that in a way. It's kind of a little round version of that, It's not until the 1930s when they have square ones. So you have these events. Actually, I think Beaumont gets branded. He ends up getting branded as Black Dick and a bad guy. Although his own writings and reports say that the other opposition were cheating in the elections and voting, which I don't put it past them for cheating in the elections and voting. They're still cheating now. And they don't even, the worst thing with Boris Johnson is he cheats in front of the whole country, in front of everyone, in front of the nation, and he even lies, and even the Speaker in Parliament has to even, punish him or chastise him. And even the previous Speaker of Parliament, he even openly says he doesn't believe in what he's saying. But people like Johnson, who lie and cheat, they've got no shame. They've got no shame at all. And it's kind of like they've been specifically chosen because they've got the ability to do it. It's kind of like a skill and a talent, It's kind of the man for the job, They can do it, and it doesn't bother them. And for some strange reason, they can carry on doing it. And some people even champion them for it. It's almost like, they're cheered for being a cheat. It's almost like, these liberals are putting these, liberty caps on representation on the land because they believe in liberty and, freedom and fairness and equality. And it's like, well, the opposition to that is, the opposite to honesty and truth is lying and cheating. And it's almost like Johnson is there really to keep the lies and the cheaters sane, to think that, oh, it's okay to lie and cheat. He's Boris Johnson, he's a scoundrel, a liar and a cheater, and it's okay for it to exist. Don't worry if you're a liar and cheater or a scoundrel. Here is Johnson. Learn from him. Here he is on the pedestal in front of the country. Be like Johnson. Don't be like Jesus. Don't be like Corbyn. Don't be an honest. Don't tell the truth like Corbyn. Don't fight for freedom and people's rights and honesty. Here is the new model army, the model of the scoundrel, the model of the cheat. Here is the man who will take all the money off you all. He is Rees-Mogg. He is Boris Johnson, the Tories. The greed. New model greed, new model army. It's just diabolical that people actually go into the polling station and put a mark in the box and sign it. It's just diabolical, But then again, he's the man after the man after the man after the man, stuffing his face with pies, walking down the road, rolling down the road. He's a new model, Be like this, it's Lord Annenfield, it's Mike Parker, feasting and less fasting, more feasting, There were more feasting at Stonehenge, more feasting, even got Professor Mike Parker on the side, more feasting, definitely lots of feasting going on back then, feasting, yet, why are there spiritual and religious leaders going on, fasts, It's just, I'm kind of getting a bit sick of it now, and a lot of people are, and we've got a lot of people, protesting about it. In fact, unfortunately, even Extinction Rebellion are culprits because you've got like, I don't really want to mention Fergal, but Fergal's putting photos of his big fry up, his big English breakfast fry up, and then they end up doing that Doctor Who programme episode on the Halloween apocalypse when they've got all that Jeff Storage thing with all the tins of beef and beans, and then he ends up going on Facebook and saying, like, oh no, I'm going vegan now, it's just, the mind boggles, It's just getting ridiculous now, really, and there is, it's about time we put an end to these political parties and this opposition, this division, as it's portrayed in Doctor Who now, division, because we've got, it's like spy versus spy, innit? This whole, cabled telephones in, police chiefs' houses. It's like spy versus spy, and it's pitting, it's like the flip side of the coin, they've got the heads and tails, but it's all allegiance to the coinage, isn't it? The sovereign power, Maybe they found out that Beaumont wasn't Majesty's faithful opposition after all, and Beaumont was, Ramsden was saying things that weren't in tune with the Tories' game plan. But yet, was supposedly meant to be able to have an opposition party, but as long as it's Her Majesty's faithful opposition and faithful to the coinage, then you're all right. But you can't really oppose a coin because a coin's there to be spent or either stockpiled or spent. And if you're not allegiance to that, then there's not really any other direction you can take a coin in, because it's heads or tails. It's slotting it in the slot machine. Either you're slotting it in a slot machine, or you're spending it, or you're saving it. And if you're not allied with that, there is no opposition to be had, because true liberals, believe that there shouldn't be money, that everybody should love each other and share things, and that's definitely not in allegiance with the Tories' game plan, because if you sharing and love and sharing equals no need for any coinage or money, so that's definitely not in the game plan, and maybe that's what liberals like Ramsden ultimately Although, you know, I wouldn't have said he was that liberal because he was the High Sheriff, wasn't he? You know, so ultimately, you know, but that's what happened. In that, what happened with Oliver Cromwell, you know, with in that what happened with Brooke and the others, you know, they ended up, you know, what happened to Cromwell, you know, there were people within the circles who ended up, you know, thinking that we should have Lord Protector and not have sovereign power, you know. And then that's when the ancestors of, you know, Ramsden got put in. After all that, he got put in the Tower, didn't he? Got put in the Tower for treason for a number of years, you know. And that's something they got on Ramsden because he got Ramsden's predecessor, I think, had been put in the Tower, you know. So this is allegiances of the ancestors, and this is the whole thing. This is why, if you are a certain person with a certain name, or you have a certain tendency, and they can't buy you over to their side, then if you're not, you know, even if they've never met you, you know, they can listen in, you know, this is this sort of guy, you know, he's likes doing things for people, you know, he doesn't like, you know, making money for the crown. You know, people who do favours for people and give away people for charity, you know, there's no money for the government. Although if the government, you know, appears that it's not giving any charity, then, you know, people won't like it. So he's got to have the frontage of giving some amount of charity. Which is what the church now, it's charity, you know, giving money away. But yet, the church is got a book where it says, you know, these things are bad, all these sins. But yet it's hypocrisy, you know, it's fueled on the church is sitting there eating cane teaks from British sugar, which give people diabetes. You know, it's definitely another frontage that is corrupt frontage. You know, it's this is what it's all about. This is the dilemma we're at, and unfortunately, Extinction Rebellion are too focused on the front line. You know, the front line, the hard right. You know. Blockading the railways, blockading the airports, doing the demos in London, that I think they're not enough on the left side, which is taking a step back, looking at the history. You know, Extinction Rebellion couldn't give a monkey's chuff about the history. Well, they can when it's, you know, statues and slavery and all that, but this is evaluating what has been going on, what has been happening. You know, what are these opposing parties, the Liberals and the Toffs, and, you know, and unfortunately, I don't think Labour wasn't liberal. Labour was going along with the mass manufacturing and getting all the factory workers to go along with it. You know, and yeah, all these things are happening. You know, these symbols being erected. You know. And some people don't like it, you know, and it's always this kind of ongoing. It's almost like an ongoing division, conflict, isn't it? You know. So just as I was saying the other day, when I was doing the talk on one of the other videos, it just popped into my mind that speckled band, and I knew the only bit of information I knew about it was that it's got that snake in it, and it's. You know, Sherlock Holmes is set in the 1800s. So, I'm just looking now, and as it turns out, it's saying, firstly, right, Arthur Conan Doyle is Sir Arthur Conan Doyle. So, for a start, he is, you know, is a significant, you know, recognised part of the establishment, you know, like... So is John William Ramsden, although Ramsden's a baronet, so he's kind of like a hereditary knight. You know, he's like the very lower sort of part of the peerage, you know, but he's still part of it, you know. He is a knight. He gets to use a title. And Sir Arthur Conan Doyle is connected to that peerage by being a knight. So he's a relevant... you know, extension of the establishment, right? So, of the family, you know, he's an extension of the royal peerage and family, you know, he's part of the network. So it was it says it published in 1892, right? So that is, thinking back, that's bang on with when the cauldron's found, a little bit later. But it was published in 1892. When was he writing it, When did he actually... It's only a short story as well. I think that might actually be the first... I've got a Sherlock Holmes DVD box set, and I think it might be the first episode on that box set. I think it is one of the... Speckled Band's one of the stories on the BBC adaptation, which I've got, actually. That's why I knew about it, because it's the only reason I know the story's got Snake in it, because I've got it on DVD. So... and it's the main story. It's probably that and The Hound of the Baskervilles are the only two Sherlock Holmes stories that I know off the top of my head. So, The Hound of the Baskervilles. Oh yeah, it's got a dog jumping up in it as well, hasn't it? The Hound of the Baskervilles. Did not think of that yesterday. The Hound of the Baskervilles. Freaking hell. The Hound of the Baskervilles. I just thought of that now. It's got a dog in it. So, 1892. So it was published in 1892, but when did he write it? Did he write it in 1892, or did it only get published in 1892? When was he actually working on the story, and when did he think about it before he wrote it? It's saying February. Oh, right. He's giving me the month here, because I'm not even looking at the screen while I'm talking, so I'll just look down, right? Adventures of the Speckled Band, right? It was only published very early in 1892. Very, very early, February. So there's a chance that he was working on it. If it's earlier than January, if he wrote it a month earlier than that, longer than a month earlier, then you're back into 1891, aren't you? So you're looking at a cauldron's hot on the table. So it's just one of these things that happens when something happens, and probably was in the newspapers, and then inspires people to do things. At the moment, it's nothing more than that, because if this came after that find, then it's nothing more than just looking at evidence of being inspired for something, or being influenced, or gave inspiration to subject matter. But that's for certain anyway. But depending on I'm interested to know if it was published in only very early in 1892, February. Is it possible? When did Sir Arthur Conan Doyle actually write it? Even start with the ideas for it and putting it down? Because if he started putting it down on paper before the cauldron was found, then there's evidence that, if he is Sir, not just, he's just nobody, he's just like someone, it's not random, well, you know what I mean, he's relevant, he's relevant, or as relevant as Ramsden, really. So this is... It's actually even more significant than I thought at first. At first I thought, yeah, it's quite significant. It's worth noting, Speckled Band, Snake, then 1800s. Then, now, 1892, we've got the February, we've got the month, and there's got with the snake, with the Speckled Band, with the snake, with the band, with the dog, with the date, with the cauldron, with the knighthood, Ramsden, I'm starting to draw, there's something in the air, there's something, it all seems to, I want to start singing bread now, you keep it in the family, you make bread, you make it and you take it home, you make bread, keep it in the family. And I'm just remembered now that they've got, I'm actually just watching it now before I started recording this. I paused it to make this video. John Bishop is Dan in the Halloween Doctor Who series 13, brand new, and he's in Liverpool in the episode. He's living in Liverpool, so that's like, you know, but that's got nothing to do with this, because that's like, I'm getting a bit singing the bread song now. So let's get back to relevant facts. So yeah, I mentioned the Speckled Band. So now I'm thinking Speckled Band, Hound of the Baskervilles, date, month, Sir Arthur Conan Doyle, Sir John William Ramsden. And if you think about it, you know, Sherlock Holmes locking houses and sharing. You know, if Ramsden's got the Huddersfield land and Castle Hill, but he is a lower knight, a lower peer, right? So it's the family's got the hill fort. You know, the royals have got the hill fort. Well, it's Ramsden's, but he's extended, isn't he? So, but like, you know, it's meant to be share it. You know, if but the thing, the significant thing in this entire theory, even if you're going along with it, you know, because some people won't even get it and just think I'm talking a load of crap, but I'm not at all. The main point is that Ramsden is a liberal and he's not a Tory, but he is Sir John William Ramsden, and he is a baronet, but he's not a Tory baronet. So in a way, you could say it might be a little bit like, you know, you've got, if you think of the Civil War, and if you think of like Cromwell and that, you know, Cromwell didn't do it all by himself. It wasn't all to do with Cromwell, because Cromwell wasn't a knight, were he? Cromwell was just an MP. He was an MP, you know. But if if I hadn't read the Civil War, I wouldn't know anything about it. But I do know something about it, because it was about his affiliates. It's about affiliations, isn't it? I mean, there's like there's Brooke and Say. There was those 5 guys. I forgot them all now, because I haven't been reading it for the last few months. I had them all off by heart in my head. Brooke. There was like, you know, Brooke. There's 5 guys, and they're all peers, but they're all certain allegiances and certain parties. And what it turns out is that you've got royalists and roundheads, you know, and that's what happened, you know. And they took sides, didn't they? And supposedly by this time now, they've moved. You know, the obviously Oliver Cromwell died, and then England wasn't under the Lord Protector anymore. It went back to royalty. But then you've still got different parties, and then I think the Roundheads ended up transforming into the Whig party, the Whigs, but there were still Whigs in the Tories. Now, Liberal is another party, isn't it? That's another different party, but it's not a Tory party. And we know that because of that dumb steeple that's up the road from us, I know about the dumb steeple, that's on, it's got a plaque on it of Beaumont's plaque, right? But I'm pretty certain with Ramsden being a Liberal and that being there, those Irish Round Tower, if you build one of those, surely it's a symbol of affiliation with a more of a Roundhead, and it's got the affiliation with the Irish Round Towers and Scotland. Really, it leans more towards the Celts and the Britons rather than the it's not a symbol of, you know, it's a symbol of more of an Irish Scottish affiliation, you know, a Celtic affiliation really, and it's not just a one-off one. I know this, like I said in the other video, only because I was talking about it, putting pictures of it on Facebook in a group, and then other people started telling me, they started saying, oh yeah, I've seen one of those near us. And I said, have you? And then they started putting pictures up of them, and they're all on like private land, like private estates. So these big estates, like people like, people like Ramsden, like John Williams Ramsden. Yeah, he's got estates. He was a baronet, but there were certain estates that have got them built on the land in the estate, but they're follies. They're not actual real round towers because they're not big enough. They're smaller, but it's a folly. But it's an emblem. It's a symbol. And I know for a fact because of that book that was going around. Because there's a guy on YouTube he does an Irish guy. He does a full presentation and talk about those ramp towers, and he pretty much in that talk he basically tells us everything that's known about them. It's quite a good video, and there was a printed there was a pamphlet or a printed thing going around in the 1700s that it showed them to people so that they knew about them. It told them about them, and it had diagrams and spec of them in there, specifications, and then that's how they ended up getting built, those folly things, because people knew about them. So that's the thing of it. So that's probably why. You see, why didn't Beaumont, if that folly was rebuilt, the one near us, right? If it says rebuilt, but we don't know where the original one was, or if there even was an original one. But he didn't put it on the hill fort. He didn't put it on the hill fort, right? Oh, and there's one over Ashton-under-Lyne as well. There's one over the top of them. It's actually sort of on the edge of the Pennine Moors, but on the Manchester side, Ashton-under-Lyne, because it is a symbol of the Liberty Cap, and it's about liberty. If you're liberal, what is a symbol for liberal is liberty. That's why they call Liberty Caps. So, he probably didn't want it on the hill fort, because I don't know why, but he didn't. He built it at Grangemore. Right, and he probably didn't. Why you might have said, well, why didn't he build it on the Pennine, on the edge of the Pennines? Like up the top of Firth or Moss. Well, it's called Grange Moor, and it's like the word moor, isn't it? And it's sort of you can still see all that from there. And because there's that one at Ashton, I don't know when that one in Ashton-under-Lyne was built on the edge of the moors. If there's already that one on there, you don't need another one there. At the end of the day, Huddersfield is on the edge of the moors anyway, so it's near enough. He didn't put it on Castle Hill. Now, because of, for some reason, that Prospect Tower Company popped up and people wanted to raise money, and then they built that one at Abraham Heights or whatever. Which I think is kind of like a leverage move to because I just think that I think that there were royalist interests in having a symbolic thing on that hill fort because it's a statement, and whether or not Ramsden didn't want it on there because he was a liberal. And obviously, you're not being liberated when you get a tower, not a tower like that. But at the time, it didn't know what it was going to look like. There was various different designs. It could look like anything. It might have ended up looking like But maybe because of Ramsden's liberal affiliations and because of that Liberty Cap style folly, which is at Grangemore, near enough by. Why didn't they end up building a ramp tower actually on Castle Hill itself? Well, but Beaumont didn't want it on Castle Hill because probably didn't want to mess the site up. But if there are all these people liberals are putting these symbols for liberty around building them, right, then it's symbolising liberty and allegiance with that party. Now, if that party is not cutting the mustard with what the Tories like or want, they're not going to like it, are they? And they're going to feel more secure and, in charge or in power. So that's probably why they wanted to persuade Ramsden to put a tower on the hill and have it, to Queen Victoria to make sure that even though they're liberal, they want to, as Jeremy Corbyn says, it's Her Majesty's, what do you call it, faithful opposition, it's a symbol of faith, well, yeah, well, you can opposition, but we still need, because, by the way, and I need to say this as well, I don't want to forget not to say this, I need to say this, which is John William Ramsden won't have kneeled himself, will he? Because it was a hereditary knighthood. So he's a liberal. He's a knight of England, hereditary through birth, that he gets to use the title. He's a baronet. He's extended peerage of the lower ranks, but he is a knight of England. But he's never kneeled. He's never he's never took the knee. He's not actually knelt himself like kneel. And in fact, he's liberal and he's opposing the Tories. So there's a reason why. They want to make him, to, do a bit of bending, make him bend a bit, just to make sure he's a bit flexible into keep him in check, you know what I mean? And it's an important site. I don't want to stress this enough, that it's a beautiful site, and although it's nowhere near as popular as Stonehenge or any of the Long Barrows or any of the Irish sites, that is mainly because of the fact that there's no other sites near it. It doesn't underrate the site itself. It's the actual landscape around it that makes the site beautiful. I'm not saying there aren't more beautiful places in England, like in Northumbria or in North Yorkshire or in Skipton or Cumbria, wherever you want, West Yorkshire's a big place, but it just happens to be after you come over those Pennine Hills and in a nice little bit of a valley, and back then when it was all forests, it would have been as nice as anywhere else. It would have been as nice as but it's not the Heights of Abraham with all those deep valleys and stuff like that, or Bristol Channel going through the cliffs or anything. But it's right in the middle of the island, so it's a majestic sight, particularly from certain views, and it is kind of like a big long barrow in a way. So and we don't know for certain what was or wasn't on there. It was important enough for William the Conqueror to want to bang a fortress on there anyway, and then put a castle at Mayfield. So it was significant, or they wouldn't have fortified it. And we don't really know for certain how accurate Varley's excavations were anyway. We don't know whether Varley's telling the truth or not, and whether he's accurate or not. We don't know whether how much it was changed or damaged by the Normans anyway. They could have really warped it and changed it around a lot. Apparently it was then chopped up into 3 pieces, but so it holds a lot of to hold the fort, so to say. If Ramsden's holding the fort, then you've got all this Battenberg stuff going on, and then the design gets picked, happens to be like Battenberg kind of sort of shape if you stand on its end, and like the corner square of it. And then with this Speckled Band adventure, and if it hadn't have been, if the writer of the Sherlock Holmes had not have been a knight, then I'd be less interested. But now it's, instead of looking at it and pulling the page up and thinking, oh, there's something in it, and then thinking, oh yeah, I'll check it, and then maybe not. I'm actually looking at it now and thinking, oh, there's something in it, and there's something more in it, and there's something more in it, because not only is a contemporary with Ramsden, then there's that dog in there and the Baskervilles as well, which I would actually be interested in knowing. Now I want to check to see when the Hounds of the Baskervilles was written. Was that one of the ones that he wrote earlier than that, And if he did, if the Hound of the Baskervilles was written before 1891, then there is a possibility that if the Cauldron is not legitimate, there's a chance then that Sir Arthur Conan Doyle's Hound of the Baskervilles may have influenced the person who did make it and forge it, And if Conan Doyle, had, we don't know actually when he put it down into paper. It was published in 1892, but, he could have had it in his... I don't know all this stuff, but, I'm not the person who checks all that. I'm the person who says, right, I've something worth checking up. This is just the stage, this is still at the initial stage of, confirming if there's something worth looking into more or not. I'm not looking into it to confirm it or disconfirm it. I'm just doing the early stage of that to say, there's something worth looking into. So, Speckled Band, Hound of the Baskervilles, 1892. Sir Arthur Conan Doyle, you know, it's all, there's, you know, I think there's something there, you know what I mean? And funnily enough, there is on the snake plate, on the Sununurus plate, with the two animals that both raise the paw up at each other. You know, it's difficult to. I don't actually know what those two animals are, because they kind of look a little bit like sort of. They kind of got like these like ram horn things, but they're not. I think they're mythical creatures. Although there might actually be an actual creature. They could be, you know, there's. It makes you think of those antelopes, but I'm not too sure what they are. So, you know, I don't know what I'm talking about when it comes to those. I'll admit that. But so I think that, was there anything else that I wanted to say about it for now? Not really. Other than the fact that it's a big boat, and once you have taken charge of the boat, then obviously Ramsden is not the captain of the ship anymore, so to say, once the tower's been planted on there. And then lo and behold, you know, we've got the first sea captain title is created. Yes, these titles can be created and pulled out of the ether, specially tailored, you know, for these people to have, you know, and, you know, just happens to be Battenberg cake. You know, what a fucking coincidence, you know. Coated in almondberry, with a bit of Mars bar den in there as well, marzipan den, you know. In fact, it's a miracle there's not a sugar factory, you know, on there as well, you know. If we could have built a sugar factory on the top of the moors, that'd have just been the icing on the cake then, wouldn't it? You know, other than the fact that, you know, if you go over to Battenberg, then, you know. Oh yeah, I've just remembered there's one last thing, and I'm just kind of glad I just remembered it, because that was something I wanted to mention as well. Just remembered now. So on the previous videos, one of the previous ones, I think I've done about 8 now, when I draw the line from Battenberg to Battenberg, and it's a dead straight line, and it points exactly straight up to Gundestrup, right? It's actually like a little. It's a line, you know, like an arrow. And if you imagine it's an arrow and you fire it, you could shoot it, and it could fire it from Battenberg, and it could land in Gundestrup, right? And the thing is, with Castle Hill, the legends and tales of Castle Hill were meant to be associated with Robin Hood and Robin Hood's death, where Robin Hood went to see one of his relatives and he died. And the bicocket hat of that era and period in the medieval era of what Robin Hood is represented for wearing, that hat is the shape of the Castle Hill fort, right? There's no doubt about it. And it's not a coincidence that there's stories of him dying in Mirfield. Now the thing is, the shape of Castle Hill is like a boat, right? And on a ship you've got the stern, the bow, starboard and aft, right? Those are the directions. Starboard's the right-hand side, and the bow is the front, and aft is the back. So the front of it is the bow, right? It's called the bow. So, you know, what are the chances of that? You know, Robin Hood was in the area and died, and there's a story that he shot an arrow. And what would you shoot an arrow from? A bow. And what's that? A massive, huge hill fort. Then the front of it's a bow. And if you actually not go it dead straight with the front, but if you, in fact, that hill fort is slightly, the actual bow of that hill fort is slightly to the left, not to the right. But if you actually did go it to the right instead of the left, and if you could like metaphorically fire an imaginary arrow quite along, you know, not a stupid fantasy distance, but, you know, kind of like, you know, as the crow flies, a somewhat, you know, fair distance, like a decent distance, you know, like you end up exactly going to Mirfield Castle, which is the other little thing that the Normans built there, which is where Robin Hood died. So, and it's shooting it north, right? So in a northerly sort of direction. So that is like an arrow being fired north from a hill fort, right? And then if you look at that line that's drawn up from Battenberg to Battenberg that I did, it's like an arrow. What are the chances of that? Dead straight line, straight towards Gunnerstrup. Like, it's like shooting an arrow. So that's the other strange thing. So that's that. And at this point now, I don't even know why I'm even making this video, because I don't even want to make this video. It's just kind of ridiculous. It's getting ridiculous, and every night I kind of think, maybe I should delete those videos, because I don't even want to have to talk about it. It is literally like a Sherlock Holmes mystery, isn't it? It's almost like, a Scooby-Doo cartoon or the Mystery Machine. But the funny thing is, I shouldn't criticise myself, because these are the type of mysteries that people actually write. But, if I wanted to be an author and a novelist, I could actually write this and make a proper story out of it and then publish it and say it's just fantasy, But I've based it on these loose facts or whatever, and it's got, some facts and some fantasy in it, and it'd make a good story. Like somebody'd actually buy it and go, "Wow, that's a really good story," like Speckled Band or something, because of that, it's not a terrible one. It's not like a rubbish story. It actually, it's like the Da Vinci Code in a way, because the Da Vinci Code, it's meant to be like, you read it and it's meant to be realistic, as if it could happen. And that's the thing with this. When you do all this thing with Castle and the Ramsdens, and then you got this Speckled Band and the Man of the Baskervilles, and the dates are all right, and you're like, it almost could be true, and to an extent where, it's actually within possibility of being true, and the equation of it is dependent on whether that cauldron is legitimate or not, or whether it is fake, because the equation comes down to algebra. If cauldron is fake, then the story likely is true, and if the cauldron is not fake, then it is probably not likely true. But a lot of these things, it's clearly obvious that if the cauldron is legitimate and it was found, then it clearly, the date is correct for influencing Sir Arthur Conan Doyle's work, without question, because it's ideologically, it would have been a big thing back then, and he's an author writing books at the time, and he would, it's kind of like a no-brainer, really. It would have been inspiration at the time, And there's definitely, even now with that, trying to get that cafe on there, it's all a mystery, Why is it that Bernard McGuinn, the Tory, is the person who's opposed to it, don't want it on there, the cafe built on there, yet, oddly enough, it's Barry Shearman who's meant to be the opposition, the Labour guy who actually wants it on there, miraculously, even though he's opposed to Tories. He's the one who wants it on there and has been fighting to try and get it on there, and has ruined half the town with Sir Patrick Stewart and with Prince Andrew. So, well, there you go, Prince Andrew. So, forget the baronets, go straight to the, you can lead an horse to water, but you can't make it drink, You can lead a, you can have a baronet owning a hill fort, but you can't make him put a tower on it. Well, you can. No, that's the thing. You can have a baronet with who owns an hill fort, but you can't make him put a tower on it. Well, then until Tomlinson pops his clogs, and then you have to get Prince Andrew over himself. There's nothing like the personal, what they say in that new Doctor Who episode, when they've got that grand serpent, there's nothing that beats a personal touch. So I have to get Andrew and himself to do it. And the next thing, Andrew's now been accused of paedophilia, and then he got booted out of the university. So, I just don't understand, how Shearman, how they got Shearman supporting it, other than, through the fact that they got him because he thinks he's a bit of a local compo. That's why, because he's like working class labour and there's a compo lasting the summer wine, and Nora Batty and all that, Nora Batty Battenberg, blah blah blah, and and then they put the Beatties cafe, the posh cafe with cake. You can probably buy Battenberg cake in their shape, like Castle and Beatties and on Firth, next to Compos to try and beat it and do better. So that made Shearman, I think, kind of want to have he got kind of like drawn into this cafe competition kind of thing through that. And then he lost the plot, really, when, the cafe is the last thing you want, because it symbolises nothing but more Battenberg cakes, more sugar refineries. And at the end of the day, sugar is a drug, right? And I've done a video on the difference between food and a drug. What is the difference between food and a drug? Food is not a refined substance, right? A drug is a pure substance, right? What is cocaine, right? What is salt? It's a refined, purified substance. It's not food. It's a chemical. It's a refined chemical thing. Sugar's not food. When you get a bowl and start pouring sugar into it, you're pouring drugs into a bowl, and then when you make something out of it, like two refined substances, how is that food? It's a refined substance. You might as well be mixing heroin into it or something. Sugar is not food, right? Animals eat food, mainly things that grow, because why? It's got nutrients in it. That's the point. Nutrients is food. Leaves, plants, maybe other animals, if that's how you've evolved, like eating insects and stuff like that. But at least when you're eating insects, it's providing all the different nutrition. An insect's not a refined substance. Now, we know that bees make sugar, but we're not bees, though. And at the end of the day, it's not in the it's not in the honey. At the end of the day, is a liquid and it's got a colour to it. I wouldn't say that honey was. It's not like getting a bag of sugar out and it's just all like, when you look at sugar, what is it like? If you look at sugar and look at salt, it's a refined chemical. It's not, and you need to get this into your head. It's not food. It's not a food. It's not, what, creatures of this planet, recognise as food. It's a man-made, it's a refined chemical substance, and it's a highly addictive one as well. That's the problem. And people who, can't understand that in the mind and the brain is because they've got that much brain fog. They're that high on it that they haven't even got the clarity and clear thinking to even recognise or understand it, or the self-control either, because they're addicts. And all the people who push all this food on you are the ones who are addicted to it. Like Mike Parker Pearson, who is, a very polite and he's a very honest, well-spoken archaeologist and high-respected archaeologist, yet he has a weakness. He likes his food, and he likes also throwing his love of food into his archaeological presentations, because he's got this. I think people who like eating and love eating, butchers, bakers, big guys who have got a big round belly and like and love their food and will fight for their food, are naturally inclined to seek and justify their pursuit and use of food, like justify the pursuit and use of a drug, right? So their opinion in any argument, in the work they do, is always going to be pro-food. So whenever you give a presentation, whenever you do a talk, you're on the side of food. Therefore, you're always got to want to try, and when you're looking for things archaeologically, you're going to be looking for evidence of people eating food and a lot of food to justify your use of food. If you are a big guy who likes eating more pies than he should, and you enjoy it and you want to justify it, then there's nothing better than, finding at the end of a rainbow, not finding a pot of gold, but finding a big feast, a big fat feast. Because if you find a big fat feast at the end of a rainbow, then that's your dream come true, because you like big fat feasts and that's what you're pursuing in life. You're to continue eating big fat feasts. So there's nothing better than the archaeological rainbow. Better than finding a pot of gold is finding a big pork chop, which is like, it's like talk radio, isn't it? Like Mike on talk radio, Mike Graham, the Republic of Mike Graham. Mike's dream come true is not looking at the end of the rainbow and finding that, there's a ancient Buddhist Celtic druid sat there, or a skeleton of an ancient druid with a scroll in his hand rolled up. And when you unroll the scroll on the writing that's been preserved, it says, "Don't eat too much, do as much fasting as you can, and you will be healthy and bountiful in living. You know, that is not what Mike Graham wants to find at the end of the rainbow, or Mike Parker Pearson. You know, so he's not looking for that. And anything he interprets in his findings are going to be biased and lenient towards proving and justifying the pursuit of, you know, justifying himself and his own existence. Because that's what we do. That's the blind spot. You know, when you're driving a vehicle and you have a mirror and you're checking your mirror, you've got a blind spot. Some vehicles don't now because they've got bigger mirrors, right? And they can see more when they're reflecting back. This is the thing with archaeologists. Because archaeologists are members of political parties and have allegiances and affiliations, and they've got things what they're looking for to prove and find out. And although they're wanting to find out the truth, they will ultimately be subject to wanting, you know, interpreting the findings in a way that, you know, is more to their liking, you know, to what they want to find, you know, when looking for the truth, you know. Maybe me as well. But, you know, maybe that's the whole basis of my conversation, all these videos and conversations. But I believe, you know, but I'm not saying that I'm right or wrong or not. That's the thing. All I'm saying is that I found things here because I like to know, you know, I'll look at things and I like to know, you know, why did that happen? Why did, you know, what happened here? What happened there? You know, what caused this? What caused that? You know, and when I find evidence for it, you know. But this is not the sort of evidence that you dig up out of the ground. It's not like a little flint or a little bit of pottery or this or that, or you can date to this time. These are like other people doing things and their use of subjective material and ideas, right? Where have they got the idea? Where did their idea come from? What inspired it? At what time? At what place? You know, it's Sir Arthur Conan Doyle. He's writing about hounds of Baskervilles and speckled snakes in 1892, which is the year after the Underground Cauldron was found, which probably was in the newspapers at the time, or at least in some of the or at least in you know, academic circles, and it happens to have an hound on it jumping up like an hound of the Baskervilles and snakes on it, you know, and anyone who would say to me, you know, well, what's that got to do with it? Shut up, you know what I mean? I hate people like that, you know. What's that got to do? What do you mean? What's that got to do with it? You know. You know, there's some people got no imagination, and that's the problem. You know, you can't do an ideological investigation about ideas and thoughts if you ain't got any ideas and thoughts. That's the problem. You know, and that's the thing with archaeologists. They're too objective. It's all objective. You know, down to a fact where, you know, oh, what's this in the floor? Oh, a flint. You know. 1 flint, 2 flints, 3 flints, 4 flints, you know, 5 flints, still looking for more flints, you know, have you figured it out yet? Then I need more flints to figure this out. You know, well, there's Sisbury Hill Fort there, it's full of flints. You know, there's an entire production line of flints coming out of there. Is that enough for you? You know, no, I need more. You know, there's 1 pot chop, 2 pot chops. Okay, then, you know, you've had enough now. No, more. I need more pot chops. More, we need a feast. Let's have a feast of pork chops. And at that point, you know, that is when people need to, you know, get a grip. And that's a problem. Like 1 cake, 2 cakes, 3 cakes, 4 cakes, 5 cakes. Now we've got cakes everywhere. And now we've got a diabetes epidemic. You know, this is the problem. And then you've got, you know, George Monbiot on there, you know, screaming that the world's on fire and, you know, the world's going to end. but he doesn't, you know, he's talking about fish getting farmed and treated badly and rotting all these salmons and stuff like that. But, you know, maybe I think Monbiot needs to get on the sugar refinery subject, you know, because, you know, that's the thing. These sugar refineries with these royal charters and all these, you know, it's a drug factory. That's the problem. And people know that it's a drug because it's a refined substance and it's causing all this harm. It's no good, you know. But we've got a nation of addicts, a world of addicts. That's the problem. Got a world. They've created a world of sugar addicts because they think we're all insects when we're not. We're humans and we're supposed to eat plants. That's the problem. So another insight looking at these Speckled Band adventures now. On the other video, I was talking about the Hound of the Baskervilles. It turns out the Hound of the Baskervilles is quite a later. It's one of the later stories. It's not one of the early ones. The Speckled Band is one of the early ones. Although before that, then you've got a scandal in Bohemia, which is scandal is in Bohemia is a scandal overseas, and then you've got the red. The Scarlet something, I forgot it now, but this Speckled Band's quite significant now, because now I've been thinking about it a little bit, not a lot, but a little bit. I've just realised when you've got this the advent of the telephone, which is like a cable, proper cabled telephone, and they're actually getting it installed into. They're getting telephones around this time when these stories are written, or even just before. They're actually getting hard cable telephone lines installed into, for example, like the chief police officer's own house, not just into the police station. Like the chief police officer's own house is getting one in, and then it's getting it cabled into the police station and stuff like that, you see. And these Sherlock Holmes stories are getting published in, it was a magazine called The Strand. So it's like this, called The Strand. There's a street in London called The Strand, which is, you know, a long piece of string or a strand. Like a cable, telephone cable is like a strand going into a house. So a lot of people, you know, as people who have a decent imagination would always think, you know, as soon as you invent a telephone and have it in your house, you would think, oh, people, if there's anyone listening into the house, you know. It's actually a cable coming into the house, you know, it actually gets cabled in through, you know, the walls into the house. So the Speckled Band, it would have been exciting back then, this story of this snake coming in, because it's like a snake's like a strand, isn't it? A snake is a strand, and it would get published in the Strand newspaper, so it would have been really fashionable and cool, this Sherlock Holmes story. And also the telephone cables getting cabled in is like it's also like a wire, like a snake, isn't it? So, and then at the same time, what are the chances of that? You've got the cauldrons dug up, and then it's got a strand on one of the things on it, you know. Now, I would like to find out the exact sequence of these events as they actually did happen, not when they order the newspapers report them, you know, because when we're told that Arthur Conan Doyle wrote this story in this order, and then this one was published and that was published, no one knows for certain, obviously, except if we've got his private notes or his family knowing in his extended notes, exactly how much of each story had started. Did he just write one to the finish, then the other to the finish, or did he have some ideas that were going round and then he'd sort of jotted them down and then made a story out of these ideas and those ones, or he started writing the first half of one of them? Because there's a collection of, I think there's like 12, the installments, there's like the first set is like a set of stories, you know, like a set of 12 or whatever, and then another set of stories. I think there's 4 main stories, and then there's a couple of installments of like 12 short stories each or something like that. It's just ridiculous. I mean, one would think that, you know, that big find, and him being Scottish as well, you know, he's a Scotsman. Arthur Conan Doyle was born in Edinburgh, and then he's got like a snake's head. You know, that's the story behind the Speckled Band, the head of a snake. You know, and then you got this. It's the Strand magazine is the main thing, and then you got the Cauldron coming up. It's got like a strand on one of the plates. To me, but that Strand newspaper was already going for quite a while. It's just so kind of like Man, it's just like, it's almost as if it is a Sherlock Holmes story, the whole thing. It's almost as if you look back at these events now, maybe you didn't realise at the time when it's happening, maybe you did. It depends if you're a person who's up on current affairs, like you are now, and you're watching, reading everything to know what's going on, and you're clued into what's going on, then you will know these things as they're happening. If you're not, if you're just someone who's, you know, getting on with the business of, you know, being a plumber or a stable and or whatever, and you don't really read the papers that often, and you don't really, you know, back then obviously they didn't have TV and telephones were brand new. It's totally different. You're not quite as informed. So now we can look back, and we can look. And back then, you probably won't think of over a certain time period. Now you can look back, and you can look at it, and you can go, all right, and then you can, some people are not into this at all, and they don't even believe in ideas. They don't look at something. They don't pick an object up and go, oh, where did the ideas for this object come from? And you can see the ideas in that object that the object is ideologically formed and created from other ideas. And you can strip them down to, and then it's all about tracing it. You've got to have an imagination to be able to be interested in and think of these things. You've got to be curious of every object you find, and what is it? What do the meanings say of it, and where do you think those ideas might have come from at that time? And you can look and you can find things. Some people really don't rate this. Some people absolutely say, what a load of rubbish, you're talking nonsense. And to me, those are those people who are lacking in the imagination, I think that, if you're the sort of person who, but yet archaeologists can say, oh, I dug up a flint and I found a flint, and, we tested it in a laboratory, and this flint is exactly from this. We know it's from this flint crop in Pembrokeshire because we tested it and it's the same type of flint. Well, how do you know it is? There might be some other ones that are exactly the same as well, but we looked and we couldn't find any. Well, how do you know you haven't found them yet? Do you know what I mean? Well, it is, we're percentage sure that it's this or that. I can guarantee you, right, when you have got a guy who is, Scottish guy who's writing, crime detective stories featuring, a snake, he's from Edinburgh, right? And he's written about a snake, which is a short strand coming through into a house, and that's just like a phone cable, and you are starting being installed. Who solves crime is police, and what is Sherlock Holmes detective? I mean, if you would, say that it's got nothing to do with it whatsoever, there's something wrong with you. I really think you're lacking in the imagination. You know what I mean? But it's just that cauldron just kills it. Really, I'm like, what? You gotta be kidding me! That cauldron is dug up at the same time. Like, what? And the magazine's already going called The Strand. Unless they created it specifically for these stories, but I doubt it. It sounds like it was a proper established magazine. It's just kind of, it's so like cheesy that it's ridiculous. So what gets me about this Glastonbury Tower? Well, that's actually not the original building that was on there. There was one, and there was an earthquake apparently, and it fell down. So this is actually a later version. But Glastonbury Tower, actually, an actual building on there only dates to Norman times anyway. And funnily enough, as it turns out, it's now scientists are telling us. I read the other week that the scientists are claiming that this chalk man, I forgot what it's called now. It's the Cernhern or something, the Cernhern man, whatever. They're saying that this actually only dates just after 1066, sort of ish. Not far after. So it just seems the design of it clearly is posing as a prehistoric design, though. It's not exactly coming across as a Norman picture. It's trying to pose as a prehistoric figure, but it's not prehistoric. It's actually kind of Norman era. So to me, it suggests that if the scientists dating on it are correct, then it's clearly a fake. I mean, why would Normans draw something in the style of a prehistoric figure other than wanting to fake it? Now, the thing on that Norman tapestry with the Battle of Hastings, there's a lot of horses in that tapestry. If you think of it, it's a battle and it's got lots of soldiers. You think of that tapestry, it's actually got a lot of horses in the tapestry, but they're all fighting in at war. So Normans did draw horses, but the thing is that You see, the Uffington White Horse that is a legitimate prehistoric horse isn't... the thing with that era is that it's a tribute to the horse. And it's a horse looking up at the stars, and, you know, we get constellations from things like Pegasus and things like that, you know, it could go back longer. So it's not showing off like, oh, I'm a person and, you know, I'm kind of showing off about, you know, myself. It actually is a tribute to the horse, you know, the existence of the horse, and if not a thank you, you know, to God for creating the horse, or even, you know, showing the horse off, and the fact that God's created it and made it so a man can even sit on it and ride it, you know. So it's I don't think the Celts were this sort of, and the prehistoric people before them were this kind of, and this is my point of view, they don't seem to be self-show-offy. I think they're show more gratitude and acknowledgement for God and the planet and balance and spirituality and thank you and praise and kind of like this, you know, celebrating these are the stars, this is where the sun rises, we're going to measure it. That's just a measurement. It's you know, it's aligning something with the world around you and the gods, and then it's like, oh, this, how did the horse get there? Well, we didn't make it. It's just like that, and we can sit in it and ride it. Thank you, you know, for giving this horse. Yeah. Now this, it's the first thing. It's as if the scientists are lying to us. I don't know. It's not even prehistoric. It's Norman era, according to what I read. You know, and it's purporting to be prehistoric, clearly primitive, and it's a person. It's kind of like thinking, you know, man, it's a celebration of, you know, man, not of something who's not a man, you know. It's a self-celebration, not a thank you for something else, you know. So that's the first thing. Now, it just seems to be that this prehistoric forgery and, you know, bigging up the self, it seems to be around when these towers keep popping up everywhere, you know. Although it seems to me ironic that the Christianity was wanting to spread everywhere. It seems to coincide, you know, with, you know, more and more building of castles and churches, you know. Although we in that in the Raffra book that's been published recently, it says that in the west of Ireland, in the early medieval period, they were still building some Celtic ring fort style, you know. Even though there was on the east of Ireland, they were starting to build, you know, those ramp towers, and there was like Christianity spreading then, and you got the Book of Kells and stuff like that. There was still a bit of building, if they're correct, of some of the. There's a little bit. It's still tapering off. The Celtic area was still tapering off. The medieval in Ireland, which had been less affected, you know. So it kind of like, it seems like the Anglo-Saxon period in some parts of Ireland might have kind of been, the Arthurian period might have kind of been missed out a little bit, you know, if they're right. But this talk's not really about that. All this talks about is that these are, well, not this one, the original one that's on Glastonbury Tour, you know, pop at the same time. Now, what I did want to talk about is Sir John William Ramsden, right? Now, in the other video, I said that he's telling us that he was an MP for Taunton, which is quite a far throw away from West Yorkshire. But it seems like he went and spent some time down there. Now, whether these appointments as MPs and to go for the MP only pop up at certain times, and it seems to me certain vacancies or certain opportunities for them seem to me kind of, you know, oh, that's a coincidence, you know. Now, I don't know whether, you know, it was arranged for that opportunity to be down there or for whatever reason. But he ends up going down to Taunton. And like I said, Taunton is not far away from Glastonbury. So I've got no doubt that John William Ramsden, when he was in Taunton, because he'll have to have gone to Taunton, you know, if he was going to MP. I don't know how long he was MP there for. It seems ridiculous that people used to be MPs of somewhere where they're not even from. Well, I guess Tracy Brabin's doing that with Mary West Yorkshire at the moment. She's not even from West Yorkshire. Well, she's like might be famous for Coronation Street. I don't know where she's from actually. She might actually. I might be wrong on that actually. She might be from West Yorkshire, but she's known for Coronation Street, which is a Manchester programme. I wish I'd not said that now actually, but I'm still certain that John William Ramsden will have seen Glastonbury Tower. For whatever reason, he ended up down in Taunton, but he obviously still wasn't convinced, about Castle Hill, Now, the thing I want to mention about this tower is this is the later one, this is not even the original one anyway. It will have had doors on it, wooden doors, right? Now, at the moment, it doesn't have doors on it, right? But it probably will have had doors on back then. Currently, with it not having doors on, you can go there 24 hours, it's because it's just the shell. So no matter what the weather is, whether it's windy, whether it's not windy, whether it's warm, whether it's cold, whether you want to get away from the sun or whether you want to get away, from the wind, because it's got no doors on it now, it is always there available for shelter, right? In its current form. I'm not saying it always was available there for shelter, although if it's some sort of church, then you would have thought that you could ask to go in there at whatever time. Now, there are two sort of seats or benches in there, so if it's windy, you can go in there and sit down even, and you can even see back out again. So this is what you would call, in its current form nowadays, in the modern times, it is available all the time for shelter from the weather and for a view, Now, at the moment, the Victoria Jubilee Tower in Huddersfield is not always available for shelter. It's only available when it's open, and you've got to pay to go in as well. So you can't even get shelter now without paying. You got to pay for shelter. This is another picture of the Glastonbury Tower one. It's just a shell now. Now, when you look up inside it, it only appears to have had, when it wasn't just a shell, it only appears to have had one floor anyway, and there aren't any proper, it doesn't look like there's any proper stairs. So even when this was not just a shell, it looks like it only had a wooden upper floor, and this window in the middle here, that's not actually a window to be used as a floor anyway. It's only, you see, it's got a big high-roofed inner part. That window, you don't even, it's got a ledge on it, but it doesn't look like there was a floor on that level. It doesn't look like it to me anyway. So it seems like that you probably would have had a ladder to access it. Now, I don't know what's the point of having just one room up there anyway. I mean, what would you have in just one room? You climb up there for the view. So, I don't know whether it was actually used to praying or what, but you climb up a ladder and it's got a floor and you can look outside and you've got a view, and then you climb back down the ladder, and this bottom bit, it's just got those two seats in it. It doesn't really look... There's no room for congregation anyway, not in its current form. In the previous ones there will have been. So, at this current moment in time, it's not there for... You don't go into it for a view. The current people who are managing it they've not replaced the floor and the ladder, so you don't go in it for a view. You only go in it really now for shelter. And to be honest, from this photo, I can't even see whether it's got a roof on or not. You might even not even get shelter from the rain at the moment. You might only get shelter from the wind, or if it's hot in summer, you might kind of get a bit of shelter from the sun if it's directly over the top. I'm not sure. So, it's only there at the moment for shelter, really. You can go up the hill for a view, but you don't climb up that tower anymore. So, I mean, if you want to have a structure and you claim that it's, there for shelter, then that fits it, that fits the description. As for the ancient prehistoric time and all the terraces, the whole of the land around this is flat, So I just think, why else go there except for a view? I mean, that's, whether there were or weren't things growing on it, You know, there's no doubt that it would have been cool for a view anyway, and for people to sit on. And the more, with those terraces, you know, the more people you can fit on there, then the better, you know. So, in respect to the reason that I wanted to discuss this thing is for the reason only of the original proposal for the Jubilee Tower, the Queen Victoria Jubilee Tower at Kirklees. The whole proposal and point of it was meant to be for the main premise of justifying building it was meant to be for shelter, right? Now, I don't know what the opening times used to be when it was first opened, and if you had to pay or not when it was first opened. It said refreshments, so they will have been selling food in there, you know, at certain times. But in its current form, it absolutely is not there for the general public for shelter. Firstly, you've got to pay to get in there, right? And I don't see why you should have to pay to get in there for shelter, not even to go up to the top for a view. I mean, you wouldn't pay to go into this Glastonbury Tower one because you can't go up to the top floor because they're in the top floor anymore. There's no floor there. It's been taken out, right? Or not maintained. So, you know, you certainly won't pay to go into Glastonbury Tower for a view because, you know, you can't get up to the top to have a view out of it. Or even the second floor. Well, it's not a second floor window, the midway window, right? So this certainly is just at least it justifies. You know, you could never justify this being there for a view, but you could justify it being there for shelter. But the Kirklees Tower, you know, you can't justify it being there in its current form for shelter because you're not allowed in. The door's locked all the time, except when they can be bothered to have someone up there sitting in the bottom room, and then you've got to pay to go in. So it's far from there for shelter. It's absolutely not there at the moment for shelter at all whatsoever. In fact, it's there to make money, but it is there for a view. But you got to pay for the view. But the point is, you know, why do you need a tower for a view when the whole point of the hill is for a view? I mean, it's kind of jerky, isn't it? You know, okay, you don't have a hill, so there's no way you can go for a view. Oh, I have got a hill, now I could go for a view. But there's always someone who wants a better view, you know? Is it not enough to have that beautiful view? The hill looks nice to look at, and is it not cool enough to have that view from the hill if someone wants to go around and try and make a better view? Now, what makes me laugh is this. At Glastonbury Tower, the council or whoever's looking after this hill clearly believes that the view from the top of the hill is good enough to not necessitate needing to put the top floor back in there to have an even better view. Yet Kirklees at the Jubilee Tower, they think that it justifies paying and obviously being at the top of the hill is not good enough for view. You know, you got to go up, you know, you need a tower there to have an even better view. You know, so that's kind of, I think that's ironic, and the fact that, you know, you can't always go in there and it's windy. This is a thing. The thing with Glastonbury is this, right? It ain't that windy. It's flat. It's quite low down. Next to the Pennines, where we are in West Yorkshire, it is windy all the time up there. Whenever you go up there, I can guarantee you it is windy all the time, daytime, nighttime, all year round. You rarely go up there when it's not windy. So out of all the places where you might need shelter from the wind, right? In fact, this tower would be perfect up there to shield you from the wind, right? It clearly is not there to shield you from the wind at all whatsoever. So, you know, that's the ironic thing. And even if you did want to get shielded from the wind up there and it's windy all the time, you've got to pay. And if you go up there at night, you can't get up there anymore now because they've put a barrier on so you can't drive up there. And if you walked up there without a car, you might want to be shielded from the wind if you don't have a car to go back into because you can't go up there now because they put a barrier on. So now when you go up there, of all times when you want shielding from the wind, so, you know, Glastonbury Tower, you know, would have been perfect. But no. And to be honest, at Glastonbury Tower, you know, they can't even get a higher view. You know, it'd be better, to be honest, in my opinion, it'd be better swapping them because this Glastonbury Tower where you can get shielded from the wind would be better up Castle Hill, and you know, not need to go up any higher. And this one, right, where it's low down anyway. You know, the Jubilee Victoria Tower would have been better at Glastonbury Tower. You know, because you can actually go up inside it. and it ain't that windy there because it's low. It's closer to sea level. So I just think it's kind of ironic, you know. So, and the fact that the whole mystery around this now is kind of getting ridiculous, you know. So it's just I wonder. It was meant to be a church. You were supposed to be able to have a congregation there at some time, but I don't know what's going on with that. Cause I'm not the expert on Glastonbury Tower, but I'm just assessing it for for like in an architectural sense of like at the moment and what it can provide. And the fact that it's not even the original one anyway. The original one got knocked in an earthquake, so I don't know what the mystic Arthurian mystery is with Glastonbury Tower, because it's not even the original one anyway. It's a later version, so and it turns out this is not even prehistoric anyway. It's almost like the disappointments, the endless disappointments, isn't it? You know what I mean? So another possible giveaway for in this line of inquiry is the centre part, the medallion in the middle, which is it's meant to be a bull, but ox and bull, similar thing in it. So they've got the centre piece is like a bull. I guess you could say an ox. I don't really see why you can't say ox. So I'm thinking Oxford. Now it's got that in the centre, and that's about eating meat, and it's also got the horns that have fallen off. I don't know if it's supposed to have horns on it or not, if they've come off, but it's not got them on because they shed them, don't they? So, but I was thinking, like, if you were to forge a something like that and then have it found, and if you sort of kind of wanting to kind of have a bit of a joke out of United Kingdom, then we've got Oxford and Cambridge, haven't we? So I mean, and that's where the experts are, the expert archaeologists, Oxford and Cambridge, like it's kind of like people who would know whether it's fake or not. So if you could fool them, then you can fool anyone. Now they've got in the middle of it. I mean, I know there are other Celtic artifacts that incorporate animals in them, but this particular piece has got the ox in the middle. If you want to say that it could be symbolic of Oxford, but it's like dead in the middle, being sacrificed, so they've been killed. Then you've got back to the same old one that we keep going on about all the time. It's the bridge, Cambridge, because it's a bridge, and they all came underneath it in Cambridge, and then he's dunking the other guy in he's dunking the Cambridge people in it, finishing them off as well. So it's kind of like Oxford and Cambridge. I mean, if this is truly dating to, between this saying, they're not sure exactly whether it's around 100 BC or whatever, but they're saying like before or after. They're saying like, somewhere before, somewhere after, it's the kind of circling a big circle around, the birth of Christ era, which is quite also ridiculous. So, and another thing, we've got the Strand, and also now added to, the Strand, and then the Speckled Band, and then Sherlock Holmes, and then the telephone cables are getting fitted into the police chief's houses. Then, as well, it's when cocaine was going around. Because this period is just before it got banned. Because what you've got is this, it's actually the late 1800s into the very early 1900s. This is when, people are using heroin and cocaine, right? When, Pembroke's doing those Coca-Cola. But then, funnily enough, just after, actually is when you start getting into the early 1900s and the 1920s, and then you've got these prohibitions in America. You've got this alcohol, no one's allowed to drink alcohol in America, in the 1920s, and then the rest, after the alcohol, then, the rest of the drugs get banned, which is a little bit after, and then you're getting into the 1920s, which everyone represents the 1920s with these big long cigarettes, don't they? You know, the cigarette holders and all that, which kind of makes you think of all the drugs and alcohol and booze and that, but apparently not. Apparently it was banned before that, but they probably likely would have been using it illegally. But then you go into the war, you see, after that, you got the alcohol prohibition and the drugs prohibition, and then you go into the war then. So it's actually, if you think about it, you might in your head, when you think of, you know, all these like 1920s outfits and everything, and the style of the 1920s, and you've got the motor car being invented, and it's meant to be this flamboyant age of, you know, then you've got aeroplanes, and then motor cars, and then, you know, the washing machines, and then this, and it's all, that's just before the war starts. And then the thing is, it was actually, that gets kind of, even though you got the prohibition and the drugs being banned, that gets kind of represented in the 1920s for this sort of like, sort of, I mean, this kind of, you know, this nostalgic kind of era for all that, you know, because the long cigarette holders and all that. But yet, it actually is, the truth of the matter is, it was the late 1800s, the Sherlock Holmes sort of era, that had all the heroin dens, and then you got these cocaine fiends and all that, and absinthe drinkers. It actually was, even though the costumes aren't as stylish and flamboyant as the 1920s, it's actually the late 1800s that it actually is the drug era, even though, you know, they're walking around dressed as, you know, Sherlock Holmes and all that, you know. So, and then you've got this, this line, you know, lining up and holding the line, you see, and then he's got the Strand magazine and blah blah blah, and then the Speckled Band and all this. So it's you know, to me, you know, if it is genuine, then, you know, I'm happy if it's genuine, you know, I'm not bothered about that. But one begs to question, you know, was it found and then, you know, were the cauldron found and then it influenced all these other things? Is that the way that it happened the other way around? But looking at the dates, it seems to me that it's kind of the sequence of it all. You know, the people already started doing this writing, and then the way it kind of fits in and how it played out, it seems, I mean, what are the chances, you know, what are the chances in the sequence of orders that it plays out that, you know, you got these things happening, and then that cauldron is right in the middle of it, you know, and it just happens to have this cable on it, you know. I mean, could you find this out of the earth and then suddenly think, oh, I'll invent a telephone cable, you know? Radio didn't come till after, you know, we got Morse code and things like that, you know? But even with the Morse code, you know, Morse code comes before the proper telephone, doesn't it, you know? Because obviously it's simpler just to go, it's easier to do that than it is to, you know, actually speak on the telephone. You know, I don't, you know, he's got the Cambridge thing getting, you know, he's got Duncan, Cambridge, then it's got Oxford slaughtered in the middle. And usually English would like to, you know, they like to big up Oxford and Cambridge. But if you're wanting to dominate supremacy over your entire country and over the intelligent, you know, and over the academic establishments, and kind of really stamp your authority as a leading class, you know, even you in charge of the, you know, even you're more superior than the universities, then there's no like Duncan Cambridge and Duncan Oxford, and then, you know, even if you could outwit them and outwit their, you know, if Germany could, you know, outwit, because you see the thing about Germany, and you can throw Denmark into there as well because it's still Germanic, isn't it? The thing about Germany is they didn't get taken over by the Romans, did they? So they always had something like, you know, although they didn't completely take over Scotland, the Romans didn't completely dominate Scotland, the Germans, you know, held off and quite kind of slaughtered the Romans in a way, and the Germans held out to the Romans, you see. So they've got that, that's why you got that kind of element of supremacy. But then yet we've got Mountbattens are coming into English royal family, you see, and then they want to come with a statement, and then you take that ill fort, and then you're the first sea captain, and then you got this, you know, Oxford and Cambridge as well, you know, dunked in the bin. He's kind of sort of almost like, you know, like another not literally, like, you don't need to come over like William the Conqueror and actually have battles and defeat like that, because you're marrying in and you're coming in, you're joining in. So your war is, metaphorically, symbolically, it's the subjects, so the right of the subjects to petition is and we got the 1688 Bill of Rights, the right of the subjects to petition the king. So it's the right of the subject matter. The subjects on the cauldron are almost calling to be, believed and accepted and, legitimized as this item. But, I've never been to see it, and some people have been saying in the Facebook groups, they've been saying that, have you actually been to see it? That it's the real deal. Or they've been up to, have you actually seen this thing? It's the real deal. We've seen it. It looks quite big to me. It looks pretty big. I just, would it be that big? And this is the thing, right? This is the one. Another thing that gets me is this. Besides the Oxford and Cambridge and the Coke line, the telephone line, the Spackle Band, the Snake, then Worm, and then you got that map thing that I drew out. And then there might be other people who have kind of thought the same things that I thought, because then you dying of a day, you've got these, Icarus, looking down on the map and blasting this laser line across the land. Icarus, like drawing the line. Time to draw the line. He says, time to draw the line. Which is quite funny. And then he cuts across the ice, and it's almost like cutting Denmark off in it, almost like, because it's not that far to cut it across anyway. So when you think of that Icarus thing, kind of like that. But the thing that gets me is this, and that is that where's the bull again? So the thing is this. If it is, if it was, it's got all these, like, mushroom sacraments around the outside, but yet it's got the bull on the inside, but it's not the deer. Now, usually, wouldn't it be the deer that, because on the around the edge, you've got that Cernunnos with the antlers, and the deer shed their antlers, but yet in the middle, you don't have it with the deer shedding the antlers, like, slumped down. It's got the bull shedding the horns that slumped down, and the bull won't, it's not as eloquent as that, but you don't have, there's no bear on it, and according to Joseph Campbell, and also in Dino Diggers, Campbell didn't make it, did he? And Campbell's always talking about the symbol of the bear, Arthur the bear, like King Arthur the bear, the word for bear. And in France, you see, in the French caves, if they're legitimate, we don't know who to trust now with anything, do we? These caves have got these bear skulls and bear paintings all in the caves in France that obviously predate the building of the alignments. Like Howard Cross has been studying all these dolmens and alignments. That predates that. It's the bear, you see. And obviously we had them in the British Isles, bears as well, but there aren't any on the cauldron. So it's kind of removing it's taking the bear out of it, and that's kind of unusual, because they got the bull in there. Although there's nothing wrong with the bull, because it's a very strong creature and it basically eats grass, doesn't it? But it's still really strong and muscly, and it can shed its horns and grow them back. But it's not a deer, So why would you have the bull for slaughter in there, the oxen, unless it's some symbol of, just for normal food and respect to it. But why would you have respect for the oxen for food on the cauldron that's for purposes of religious sacrament? It doesn't make sense to me, It kind of, I'd have thought it'd be a separate thing, unless it's not meant to be a bull and it's just a really bad picture of a deer, maybe it's meant to be, but they're saying that it's meant to be a bull, and it's got a little sperm bag hanging down as well. So, and there's also even a lizard in there. I don't know of anywhere where they use the lizard motif in Celtic art. Now, we know that when I've been talking about it before on some other videos, actually, that I've done. They've got when the Vikings come over, they've got the dragon, which is not exactly, it's not a white horse, it's a dragon. And then you get this adopted by Wales, but it's not a lizard. The dragon's not a lizard. And a dragon's meant to be a giant creature, like a huge, St. George and the dragon. The dragon is a big creature, but yet they've got a little lizard inside, which is kind of like, usually reptiles, anything to do with the Celts, they won't bother putting a reptile on there, particularly if it's Northern Europe, because it's not really unless it's meant to be a little rat or something, but, why have a rodent in there exactly? Do you know what I mean? The dragon is a huge creature, then you kind of think of George and the Dragon Slaying, and that's kind of like a George and the Dragon is an Arthurian, an early Christian kind of symbology, which came earlier before. So, there are plenty of things to think about. So, and then another thing, what I should mention actually, is this, which is the druid sort of characters around the edges who have got the arms up in the air. You see, if you go back to Africa and you got the Tsila Denaja cave drawings, which are kind of like the cave bear and the kind of mushroom characters holding the mushrooms, whether they're then you start to wonder if they're legitimate or not, But there were meant to be there meant to be thousands of those pictures all over, so it might have been a bit too much for them to go around and draw everywhere, And there were some in South America as well. I don't know how many of them are like exact that one that features on Terence McKenna's book on the front cover. We don't know, but if that is legitimate, that's got its arms downwards, They're the same shape, but these arms kind of copy that, but go upwards. They copy the style of that, but instead of got his arms down, they've got the arms going up the opposite way. Now, the only way you could get the arms to go down is if you flip the cauldron upside down and turn it upside down, like face down into a mount shape, and then they'll be going down. But, I thought that's worth mentioning just as a little side note thing. So I really, I'm just putting these things out there. And most of, actually, it's like, you see, you've got these mythical creatures on here, some of them. Although that one to the right-hand side at the bottom is kind of like you get those harpies, you get harpy creatures, which are in the Assyrian artwork, kind of like bird-like. I guess this is like things like you've got the Enfield beast type thing, So I don't know really, But, maybe we could get someone to retest it again. I'm not sure. But I just, Cambridge was formed, coming out at the end of the, Anglo-Saxon, it's kind of contemporary with Book of Kells, Now it can question whether the Book of Kells is authentic or not either. You start to question everything. But, we know for a fact that, Oxford and Cambridge were established long before this cauldron was found in the 1800s, for certain. But, Ox in the middle slaughtered, Cambridge also with a defeating thing on it, with the phone, with the phone cable, with the speckled band, with the line of coke, with Oxford, trashed, with Cambridge trashed. It just seems there's that many themes. That's why I've said it's an interesting piece for certain, because whatever you interpret, it's very interpretable, that thing. There's a lot of things that fit into whoever did them, But it just makes me, what are the chances of all these things being on it, And you got to put a lot of thought into it anyway as a thing itself. You got to treat it legitimately and study it. Okay, this is a legitimate piece. What is the person who made it saying, even if they were from, 100 BC, right? What's he got to say? Then once you've, once you've pretty much extinguished, fully exhausted your study on that, all the time, thinking, wondering whether it is legitimate or not. Then you can think, then once you get to the stage of thinking, well, now let's look at whether it's legitimate or not. And I've studied this thing, I've studied this thing into the ground, I've ripped it to pieces. I've studied this thing, studied this thing so much. So it's like, okay, let's get into, now let's study it properly, right? Okay, then when was it found? Now let's study it. When was it found? What the fucking Speckle Band, Sherlock Holmes, telephone lines going in the police chief's house, and lines going around, Oxford and Cambridge dunked, she's taking the piss. Do you know what I mean? So this is Ramsden. He looks alright, you know. I mean, he looks decent. I mean, you can tell he looks like, you know, sort of liberal kind of character, you know. But the thing is, this is what gets me, right? So around this time, the telephone's taken off, the cabled telephone, and they're getting it into, the police are starting to use it around this time. Now, what happened is they got the cable into the police chiefs, right? Now, Ramsden, besides being a politician, not only down in Taunton and around this area, he was, he's a baronet, which means that he's kind of like a hereditary knight. He didn't actually get knighted. He inherited it. It's kind of lower down than a baron. And he's a liberal, which means that he's not a Whig or a Tory. So he's not actually, he's a hereditary knight, but he actually is in a different party to the court party or the Tory party. Now, so that means that he's opposition, really. Now, he's a High Sheriff of Yorkshire. So would the High Sheriff of Yorkshire, if he's the High Sheriff of Yorkshire, it's an office under the Crown, former Sheriff. So would he have got a telephone wired into him as well? Now the thing is, if the police chiefs, the constables, and people like that, high sheriffs, if they're getting cables from their own houses to the police station. Now, the advantage of, you know, we know they've got all manners of communication, like messengers, spies, flying birds that come back bring messages, but with the invention of the telephone, the hard cabled telephone, right, you've got, you know, a permanent, you know, a permanent sort of, you know, a hardwired cable into certain places. Now, if you were the government, or even if you were, you know, the authorities, the Majesty's government, you'd want it would be advantageous to keep tabs on your chief constables and particularly on the high sheriffs, and also it would be advantageous particularly for the opposition and parties if they want to listen into them. So the first thing you do to find out if they're all honest, you know, and all their who are their loyal subjects, it would be advantageous to listen to what the police chiefs were up to. Now, if it would be interesting to find out if Ramsden did have a telephone wired into his house, whether he was one of the first people when the police chiefs got him wired in, and whether they were listening into him on his phone. That's interesting. Now, this is like getting towards 1891, from the 1880s to the 1890s, and then you're getting, the cauldron pops up, like I've said before, with that plate, with everything to do with that plate that I've said before, fits in with all the other symbols, the Battenberg and all that, and the cable, the telephone cable. What are the chances of that? You know, what are the chances that just at that time, the police chiefs are getting hardwired cables in, and then we get these, in Glasgow, we get the booths on the street. Now, those square boxes, I thought that the first boxes were square ones, like what was shaped like Victoria Tower, but they were a hexagonal one, with a little bit of a peak on the top. They were first. The square ones didn't come out until the 1930s, but they were kind of like a sort of booth kind of shape. Now, they're actually in booths. if you look on that plate on the cauldron, they're all in little booths. I just get... At the time when that was found, right, can you imagine going back in time, right, us being us now, right, if you went back in time, although it's different now because I've got a phone, I can say this, I can record it, I can back it up on the internet, I don't know if anybody sees it or not, they might be able to block it and hack it, but whatever, I can share it to my friends or whatever, we've got, television, news, radio, magazines, blah, 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 well, they had printing press back then, but, we've got internet computers, find out stuff, get a million signatures against Tony Blair, whatever you want to do, watch Russell Brand, going banging on about the elite, right? How can you have, right? They're just wiring in cables to the police chief, right? Police chief officers around the country, right? And telephone's brand new. Then this cauldron pops up. One of the plates, right? There's Mountbatten kicking off and Battenberg's going around. Then there's these mounted horses on there, on a big batten, that also is like a telephone cable. Of all the things that you could pull up out of the floor, right? When Mountbatten's just, come over and got married and all this, right? The first thing that gets pulled out of a peat bog, right, is a plate from a cauldron purporting to be Celtic one that just happens to have a load of booths, of guys in booths, under a cable on it, holding on to it, like a telephone cable. And then somebody's writing Sherlock Holmes stories about a speckled band, about a snake, and there's a fucking snake on the front of there. I mean, is this for real? I mean, unfortunately, not everyone will know about that cauldron. It might have been in some of the newspapers. I don't know how many newspapers it was in. Maybe it wasn't that well known. But I'm just like, what? I mean, how can you not get pulled up and then all this is going on and you just go, what? You're taking the piss. You're taking the piss or what? There's like the big, eye sheriffs and all that lot. And you pick... How can you... what are the odds on that? What are the odds on it? Just happens to be, they just happened to pull that up, right? What was it like? That was, buried, and it just happened to have that cable picture on it, with the buttons, and then, somehow it sensed that people were doing telephone cables, and then it just pulled itself up. Bollocks. I am starting to now get highly suspicious about this object, and the time it was found wasn't found in the 1200s, wasn't found in 1684, wasn't found in 1932. It was found when they're putting cubicles in with the cable, with the Mountbattens, with the speckled band snake, with the batten to batten, point to point. In fact, I've just thought of Die Another Day now when he cuts that ice thing across point to point. He's point to point, doesn't he, on Icarus on that laser beam. And then with the worm as well, with the worm, which is next to the other Battenberg place, which is next to the hill that all goes down that big hillside in Germany, which is like castle at the side. Then they're wanting the batten to be put at Abraham Heights, and then they're trying to push one getting on the hill. What I think, right, and I might be wrong. If I'm wrong about this, fair enough. Ramsden is an opposition to the Tories, right? And they're getting phone cables in, and now they're starting to be able to listen into people, particularly influential people in the opposition, and people who they've got in places like Eye Sheriff and stuff like that, and they can get to see who are, aligned with, what their interests are. Because this is the thing now. This is what's happening now. The government like to know what people's interests are and scout out who they are so they know who's on their side and who likes the things they like and who has the same beliefs and morals they have. The government, they pretend to like charity, but, they don't like people who give stuff away because you end up like, they're not into people who help too many people, because if you help too many people, then it's not beneficial. To them. I think that Ramsden, being a liberal, he might have been saying things within his liberal circles, right, that weren't in line with the Toffs, the Tories, the Court Party, and obviously, he himself is a baronet, right? So it's not like, well, I guess they could knock him off, but it's not, it shows a sign of weakness for the extended royal family if they knock their own off too often, So what happens is that, what do you call him? That Tomlinson guy, he actually fails to convince him to do this tower, and then that Tomlinson guy ends up, getting, he dies. And then there's a bit of a hoo-ha, and then there's a few designs submitted, and they end up building that, which just happens to be sort of like the Battenberg design of that cake that's going around as well, which is brand new. I don't think that this is complete and total theory that's not substantial. There's something in it, because why would that cauldron come up at that time with the cable on it? Unless it came up before that, but the cauldron appears is conjured up after they've started doing the phone cables, innit? And then they create this new sea captain position for Mountbatten Central, get the first sea captain. Now, that is a prestigious position of honour, right? And you see Castle Hill itself that they build the Victoria Tower on. When you're on Castle Hill, it's like it is like being on a big ship and a big boat. So, and being a beautiful hill fort right in the centre of Ireland, and I know it's not as big as Maiden Castle, don't get me wrong, but the beauty of it, the shape of it, it's stylish. It's not Maiden Castle, Maiden Castle is massive, but Maiden Castle is not, Maiden Castle's huge, but it's not a sleek ship shape, the captain ship, but Ramsden had the ship, didn't he? So if you're going to ram Ramsden, not battering with a Battenberg, Armonbury, Marsden, Marzipan, if you're going to, if you're wanting to get this liberal guy who's probably in opposition to the things that you believe in, because it's opposition party, you can take a ship off him and you won't be the captain really, but, if you didn't want to sell it and you didn't want to build a thick tower on there, you use your forces of influence. Then it turns out then, Battenberg ends up being the brand new positions created, a brand new one, no one before him. He's then the first sea captain honour. So, captain of the ship, innit? This is, I'm just, to me, it seems, the order of events and the close proximity within that short number of years of these events, I just don't think that it's complete random coincidence or too many, it seems there's something going on, and then when you think of the telephone cable coming in as well, and they're starting to wanting. But once I found out that they're putting cables into people's houses, the police chief officers' houses, and Ramsden's a liberal opposition, but he's also High Sheriff of Yorkshire. There seems to be, to me, to be more motive and reason, which is, it's all about this projection of who's in charge, authority, and, that type of thing, which is what Boris Johnson's doing now. Like, they're doing it now. They bang that stupid model, that stupid sculpture up outside at Birmingham. I ain't even seen it because I ain't been around for ages because I ain't been driving, but I've seen a photo of it. The bent, it's white, but it's bent, trying to make out that it's okay to be crooked if you want, if good people can be crooked or whatever. That's what the government do. They like to do stuff like that. It's basically saying, I'm Boris Johnson, I'm a liar, I'm a crooked criminal, and that's good. That's what a good person does, and the whole country's going to follow that model, and we'll bang it next to the M6. This is Grant Schnaps. These are the crooks. These are bad to the bone criminal men who have criminal minds in this country who, they're not, it's not Ramsden. They're not liberals. They're like Rees-Mogg. He's a crook. He wants to make money. It's all about money and profit and power and control. And they're like symbolically dominating. Symbolic domination and taking over. And I really, 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 really now am very dubious. I'd love the cauldron to be authentic and real, but to me, it just... And the fact there's a missing plate on it, there's one plate missing as well. It's like... It to me, it's got that sense of... It's just... and then when you look at the Battenberg place, and then there's these hills all the way down the side, point to point from Battenberg to Battenberg, and then on that plate as well, it's got all the horses on the top, the high ground and the low ground, and then they're wanting to push that tower on the hill, which is at the side of the Pennines here, which is the higher ground and the low ground. It just all seems, to me, it just see there's something in it. The time that period of those years, it's just a few years. And all these things are happening. Like phone cables coming in. Oh, just found the cauldron, and it's got a phone cable on. Which is also mounted. And definitely that thing that they've done with the chalk man. If that's this is scientist dating stuff. Can we even go by these scientist dating? But they're saying that it's post 1066. So, who drew it? Who else would have drawn it or could have drawn it? Well, it would have had to have been William the Conqueror or someone who was opposed to William the Conqueror, and I severely doubt that William Conqueror, if someone's opposed to him, is going to get away. He's not exactly going to miss seeing that if they're going around surveying with Doomsday Book. Notice that someone's drawn a big, massive figure with a massive erect penis with a big baton in his hand. Do you know what I mean? It's you see, that is the type of thing they like doing. It's their style. That's what do they do? What's the motive? He's stamping authority down. Just conquered you and going to put big, big picture up floor. That's it. It's what it's about. It's just like Command and Conquer. And it's this the tower and the hill commanding authority, and the fact that Ramsden's meant to be high sheriff from that lot, and then they've got these then they're knocking them phone boxes out as well at getting designed at the time, because they had the in Glasgow they had the model they had an art gallery display of those designs for that Victoria Tower up in Glasgow, and that's where the fireman created those phone boxes as well. I think there's something in it, and I think it's definitely political as well, because he's a liberal, and to me, the fact that the guy looks so right, he actually looks so right, To me, this guy, he looks liberal to me, He looks like a liberal guy. And the worst thing is, it's usually the guys who are nice guys and trustworthy, honest guys, liberal guys who want to do good in the world, who people who are selfish and cheating and conniving, like Boris Johnson, listening to him on phone cables, and they go, definitely not my sort of person. We don't want this person in charge. He'll be giving all Rees-Mogg's money away, We're skint. He's a liberal. He's going to have all equal rights, and we won't be able to command and conquer anymore. We don't want this guy in charge. That's the thing. And this is why Jeremy Corbyn has been booted out, because Keir Starmer is, Knight of the Realm, is command and conquer, he's taking his political rights away. He were head of the Crown Prosecution Service. Keir Starmer is not interested in people's rights. I don't know what sort of human rights lawyer he was, but Starmer is interested in pursuing his own reward and ambition. He's not interested in, people in the country having rights, whereas Corbyn is interested in people in the whole country, and Corbyn is not interested in his own personal ambition and pursuits. In fact, I would probably say that even though Corbyn's, Labour Party, he's probably more the sort of person, that had probably got on with Ramsden, to be honest, rather than, Rees-Mogg. Corbyn's not exactly Rees-Mogg, is he? You know what I mean? This is a thing, but we don't know. I'm just putting this on the table. There may be records and writings of these people's conversations and meetings. There may be, there may be a record of him getting. If you read up on the life and times of, Ramsden, he might tell you that he got a phone fitted in. Maybe he didn't. I'm not saying he did or didn't, but I'm saying that police chiefs were getting telephones fitted directly into the house, to the police station, so it was happening. All this sort of stuff was going off. I just can't believe that play. That play is kind of like it's kind of like a mystery play, isn't it? It's kind of like the jigsaw puzzle that fits everything. But really, you can't. It's odd that a piece in the puzzle would fit everything, and that's why there's something. It begs questioning, because usually, if you pull a random picture out, it's not going to fit all these things, is it? It just that play is kind of it's the sort of, like the show. It's kind of like the show off piece, isn't it? And that's the ego talking. It's the show off. It's like, mounted on a baton, and that's the thing. It's the flamboyance, That's the thing in the movies that usually gives the criminal away, because they like to show off what they've done, and it's that showing off thing, that style, that they want to kind of like show that they've, he's kind of like, the victory march or whatever. Do you know what I mean? And it's that element of that play why I question its legitimacy, and it just, with the phone cables being fitted, with the booths, and then with the band to baton, and then with a worm bit at the end, and then the high ground and the low ground, the hills on it. It just seems to be a bit of a giveaway, if you know what I mean. And I don't know. You look at that plate and you think, maybe it was, kind of like Stonehenge and Chambers and that. The guy there's no doubt about it that the guy whoever designed it, whether they were, 100 BC or whether they were in the 1890s, whoever did it was, it's definitely an interesting and clever design, but it cannot be a coincidence, because they were putting those cables down and the booths. It just seems to be that, like, it's got that flamboyance to it that fits too well. Do you know what I mean?